Chapter 308. Cheng Fei-jun organized this martial art tea party to, on one hand, pick out geniuses for Luo Jifeng to recruit, and on the other hand establish his personal prestige. When the time came, he could use his status as a black-grade high-level alchemist to naturally convince others to join. But now Cheng Fei-jun was completely forgotten in a corner, while Ling Han obtained everyone's acknowledgement and gratitude. This really made Cheng Fei-jun seethe with anger. Who asked him to shrink back at such a crucial moment? In the world of martial art, even if you were weak, if you fought to the death, others would give you a thumbs up and call you a good man. But fleeing without a fight and being afraid to fight in public was the most despised. Ling Han clasped his hands in greeting, then brought Lu Yutong and the others back to the inn. On the way back, Lu Yutong and Li Si were still dissatisfied, saying that since Ling Han got first place, he should ask Cheng Fei-jun for that restore heart pill. This made Ling Han laugh loudly, and was even more disdainful. To think that he, the mighty alchemy emperor, would still have to eat a second-rate pill concocted by a black-grade high-level alchemist? What a joke. Not long after returning to the inn, customers swarmed in like clouds. Zhu Wujiu was already too busy, so Guang Yuan and Qing Yi both went to help. Later, not only did the younger generation of the 9 nations of the desolate north come with origin crystals, even many alchemists from the Star Brilliance Pavilion rushed over upon hearing the news. Those who did not enter the flower blossom tier were all mortals, and mortals only had a mere 100 years of life. Who didn't want to live a few more years? The more powerful the elderly were, the more they cherished their lives. To live a few more years, they were really willing to pay any price. Though the effects of 100-year-old ginseng and Ganoderma were not nature-defying, they could still prolong one's life, and living 3 to 5 more years was definitely not a problem. Moreover, these things were very nourishing and could heal internal injuries, which was equivalent to prolonging one's life. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan became housewives, happily counting the origin crystals on the side, but were looked down upon by Hu Niu. She thought to herself, these two silly girls, what's so good about origin crystals? They should be sticking to Ling Han. After selling for a day, Ling Han earned an astonishing 100,000 crystals. This was a fortune that would make anyone envious. It was guaranteed that even the Rain Country royalty would at most be a fraction of it. The auction was just around the corner, and it would start in 2 days. On the other side, under the urging of the 3 Earth-grade alchemists, Ling Han's alchemist certification would be completed very soon. At most it would take another 5 days and his proof of identity would be sent over. Ling Han was very satisfied and began to think about where he should go next. The Star Brilliance Palace Hall was only a transit station on his way out of the desolate north, so it was obviously impossible for him to stay here for a long time. He would also take the opportunity to certify as an Earth-grade alchemist, giving him a guarantee that he could do as he pleased. Now that these 2 things were about to be completed, the next step naturally had to be put on the agenda. The Winter Moon sect was going to open its doors and accept disciples. After Ling Han heard this news from others, he considered for a while and decided to go to the Winter Moon sect. First, he had to find out news about his mother. Second, he had to collect some interest. For a large sect like the Winter Moon sect, they definitely had their own medicinal garden. Ling Han planned to empty out their medicinal garden to enrich the space in the Black Tower. Who asked this sect to capture his mother and injure his father? If he didn't take revenge, how could he still be considered a human? When he had enough strength, he would naturally kill Aofeng and settle this grudge. And he would go to the Winter Moon sect. However, he had to hide his identity. Otherwise, with his identity as Feng Yan's mortal enemy, even if that spiritual infant tier elite didn't kill him as an Earth-grade alchemist, he would still be chased out. How would he collect the Winter Moon sect's medicinal garden then? Because they spent all their origin crystals, and the martial art tea party was over, many youngsters didn't wait for the auction to start, and directly set out on their way to the Winter Moon sect. However, among these people who set out, some actually circled back after walking for a while, and specially went to see Ling Han to tell him a piece of news. On their way, they noticed a few youngsters coming from the direction of the North region. Could it be people like Bao Xian Ran again? Ling Han thanked them and these people set out again. Ling Han couldn't help but feel rueful. He killed Bao Xian Ran only because the latter infringed on his interests, and didn't think too much about it. However, the result was that he gained the hearts of many people. Otherwise, they would have already left, so why would they specially come back to tell him? However, from the fact that they could leave freely, he knew that the new outsiders should be different from Bao Xi and Ran. Otherwise, they should have tried to kill them halfway and not let them leave. Could it be that they came to participate in the auction? This was very possible. After all, there was at least one blue-scale demonic fruit for sale this time, so it was normal to attract people nearby. In the middle of the night, that feeling of being watched came again. Ling Han knew that Luo Jifeng must have stared at him again. It wasn't the first time that the old guy had done something like this, but under Ling Han's eye of truth he had nowhere to hide. However, Ling Han very quickly revealed a solemn expression, because Luo Jifeng actually had his face covered with a cloth today. Hiding his head but showing his tail, he was obviously going to do something bad. Obviously, Ling Han didn't give the other a chance to make a move. And finally, the old guy couldn't hold back and decided to make a move even if it was in the inn. Ling Han hesitated internally. Should he immediately hide inside the Black Tower? Hiding inside the Black Tower would definitely be absolutely safe, but he still had one chance for the Black Tower's power boost. And he was now in the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier, and as long as he strengthened his foundation to an unshakable level, he would attempt to break through to the Spiritual Ocean tier. If he didn't use it now, it would be equivalent to wasting an opportunity. Most importantly, the Black Tower's power boost was a process of tempering the body, which was very beneficial to him, so he definitely couldn't miss it. Small Tower also said that it was better to leave the power boost as late as possible. He was now in the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier, and couldn't go any later. With the power boost, he could possess the cultivation of the 9th layer of the Spiritual Ocean tier. And with his freakish battle prowess, the 9th layer of the Spiritual Ocean tier was enough to battle a Spiritual Pedestal tier opponent. Though the higher the tier, the harder it was to battle someone of a higher tier. Battling someone in the 2nd or 3rd layer of the Spiritual Pedestal tier shouldn't be a problem. After all, Luo Jifeng was only in the 3rd layer of the Spiritual Pedestal tier. If he used the mysterious 3000 with all his strength, there should be a chance to insta-kill him. After making his decision, Ling Han immediately moved quietly and left the inn, fleeing towards a dark place in the distance. With the senses of Luo Jifeng's Spiritual Pedestal tier divine sense, he naturally discovered Ling Han's departure at the first instant. The old man couldn't help but be slightly startled. How could it be so coincidental? When he was prepared to kill Ling Han even at the cost of exposing his identity, this brat actually left the inn alone, creating a chance for him. Strange. However, he couldn't resist such a temptation no matter what. In his mind, a mere 1st layer of the Gushing Spring tier couldn't possibly pose a threat to him. The old man leaped and flew away, following closely behind Ling Han. He planned to catch up to Ling Han in a remote area and kill him. Firstly, he'd solve a problem for Cheng Feijun, and secondly, he'd extract the strange fire. Otherwise, Cheng Feijun definitely wouldn't be able to seize the position of the ruler of the Star Brilliance Palace Hall. After about 10 minutes, Ling Han suddenly stopped. It was the plaza where the martial art tea party had been held yesterday. There were still a large number of pergolas that hadn't been torn down, and the surroundings were completely dark, as if it were a ghost town. This really was a good place to kill. It was so spacious. Chapter 309. Old man, come out. You followed me for so long, you should come out for a breather, Ling Han said as he turned around. Luo Jifeng hid in the shadows and did not come out immediately. He thought that Ling Han was bluffing. How could a brat in the 1st layer of the Gushing Spring tier possibly discover his tracks? You can be shameless just because you have a cloth on your face? Ling Han sneered. Luo Jifeng was instantly enraged, and knew that he had indeed been discovered by Ling Han. He strode out and said, "Brat, how did you discover me?" "I guessed," Ling Han said casually. "I faintly felt that there was a shadow following behind me. Thinking about it, to follow behind someone in the middle of the night, it must be an old dog that cannot be seen." Luo Jifeng was seething with anger from his scolding, and shouted angrily, "How dare you? I've always been very bold." Ling Han broke into a smile. Luo Jifeng immediately calmed down. An elite of the Spiritual Pedestal tier naturally would not lose his composure like this. He clasped his hands behind his back and said, "Brat, you probably do not know my cultivation level, right? Spiritual Pedestal tier." He did not wait for Ling Han to guess and revealed it first. I've heard that you even killed someone in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Thinking about it, this makes you proud, thinking that I'm also that kind of trash? Wrong. Whether it's the spiritual pedestal tier or the spiritual ocean tier, you can't possibly have any difference in cultivation level. And this is precisely the key to your death. For some people, once you offend them, only death awaits you. Ling Han laughed and said, "So it's an old dog of the spiritual pedestal tier. My apologies. I'm actually quite curious that Chang Fei-jun could actually command an old dog like you. So I don't think you have anything to be proud of." Bullshit. Chang Fei-jun is the one who listens to my orders. Luo Jifeng immediately reprimanded. However, the moment the words left his mouth, he could not help but shiver. In a stern voice he said, "Damn it, you actually dared to trick this old man into speaking." Ling Han shrugged and said, "In any case, you're here to kill me. Moreover, a spiritual pedestal tier against a gushing spring tier martial artist would definitely be able to crush him with a single hand. I'm someone who's definitely going to die, so even if I know some secrets, so what? Old dog, let me ask you, which party are you from?" When Luo Jifeng heard this, he was stunned. The first sentence that Ling Han had said should have been his line. But why did it come from Ling Han's mouth? Although this was the truth, it made him feel extremely awkward. How can a man be so calm when he knows he's going to die? But when he heard Ling Han's last sentence, the old man became angry again. This kid still dared to call him an old dog? Why would a dead man need to know so much? He said coldly. Being called an old dog by Ling Han left and right made him reluctant to immediately kill Ling Han. He wanted to toy with the latter a bit first, then slowly kill him. Ling Han laughed and said, "An old dog will always be an old dog, refusing to listen to nice words, so I can only use force. Damn it." Luo Jifeng humphed angrily. He really could not stand being called an old dog by Ling Han, so he decided to first capture this brat, then slowly torture him. At the same time, collecting the strange fire was also a very troublesome matter. He needed Chang Fei-jun to be present, so he'd better first capture Ling Han. "Small tower," Ling Han said softly. Instantly, a terrifying power burst forth from his dantian, instantly circulating through his entire body. First layer of the spiritual ocean tier, second layer, third layer, his cultivation level soared all the way, and instantly reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Luo Jifeng was just about to make a move, but suddenly stopped and said in an extremely shocked tone, Impossible. How did your aura suddenly soar to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier? From the first layer of the gushing spring tier to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, this was practically a leap of 2 major tiers. Who could accept this? Why would a dead man need to know so much? Ling Han said. This was precisely Luo Jifeng's answer to him previously. Luo Jifeng had already recovered from his shock and said, "So what if it's the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier? With a difference of 1 major tier, it's still as easy as turning over my hand for me to suppress you. I definitely do not believe that a small place like the desolate north could possibly have a 17-year-old in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and also an earth-grade alchemist at the same time. You must have taken some alchemical pill that temporarily increased your cultivation level. This kind of increase only gives you power, but the concept of martial art cannot possibly increase correspondingly. At most, you can only display the battle prowess of the 3rd or 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. In front of me, this kind of battle prowess is practically trash," he said disdainfully. Ling Han's right hand shook, and a sword appeared out of thin air. It was not a normal metal sword but the demon birth sword. Today, he would definitely not let Luo Jifeng off. This, what kind of spirit tool is this? Luo Jifeng's expression immediately changed greatly. Even if the demon birth sword did not awaken the martial art intent within, a level 10 spirit tool was still a level 10 spirit tool. One look at the patterns on the sword's body would cause a strong feeling of helplessness, as if he was facing a top-notch elite. Level 10 spirit tool, demon birth sword, Ling Han said calmly. This time he did not hide anything. Level 10 spirit tool. Level 10 spirit tool. Luo Jifeng mumbled, his face immediately revealing a strong expression of greed. I understand you are relying on this demon birth sword. Ha 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 ha. A level 10 spirit tool is indeed powerful, but you have no way of awakening the martial art intent within it. At most, it would be slightly sharp and slightly pressuring towards me. I have to thank you for gifting me such a valuable treasure. Ha ha ha, only I am worthy of this spirit tool. Is that so? Ling Han stretched out his left hand, and with a thought wang patterns appeared on his hand, releasing a 5-colored light. Pooh! Luo Jifeng instantly spluttered. This was the martial art intent, it was the real deal. How is this possible? How is this possible? He was instantly driven mad. Relying on alchemical pills to forcefully increase one's cultivation level was actually only increasing one's power. It was impossible for one's cultivation level of martial art to increase along with it. Could it be that Ling Han was really in the spiritual ocean tier, and had only forcefully suppressed his cultivation level previously? But a 17-year-old spiritual ocean tier and earth-grade alchemist, no matter how you looked at it, this was all nonsense. How could there be such a freak? No matter how much he dared to imagine, he would never have imagined that Ling Han's soul was actually once a heaven-tier elite, the Alchemy Emperor. Thus, putting aside an earth-grade alchemist, even a heaven-grade alchemist could be immediately conjured out. And as long as his power reached the required level, with his heaven-tier divine sense, how could he not be able to manifest the martial art intent? Ling Han lightly shook the demon birth sword. Wang, the treasured sword, glowed, and 2 vein-like patterns faintly emitted light. This meant that a portion of the demon birth sword's martial art had been awakened by him. Even if it was just a tiny bit, how awesome was a level 10 spiritual tool? A frightening pressure swept out, instantly causing Luo Jifeng's heart to tremble violently, and his legs almost gave way, causing him to kneel down. Previously, a single decree from a spiritual infant-tier cultivator was enough to force Fu Yuanshang, and the other 2 spiritual pedestal-tier elites to only be able to resist with all their might and not be able to make a move. A level 10 spirit tool was naturally even more awesome. However, Ling Han could only activate 2 vein-like patterns after all, and they were only slightly lit up, so the will of martial art that he could release was too limited. As a result, Luo Jifeng still retained a large portion of his battle prowess. I shall accept such a treasured sword. At the same time that Luo Jifeng was shocked, he became even more excited. Chapter 310. Luo Jifeng was very shocked, because Ling Han could actually revive a level 10 spirit tool. Although it was only a little, it was already shocking enough. However, he also thought that if even Ling Han could revive a level 10 spirit tool, then what about him? If this demon birth sword fell into his hands, it would definitely be able to unleash an even stronger power. A level 10 spirit tool. Ha 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 ha. This treasured tool, this old man will take it. He laughed loudly and stretched out a large hand to grab at Ling Han. A black cloud spread out, and skulls floated out from within, as if the gates of hell had opened, and countless dead spirits walked out. Ling Han suddenly came to a realization and said, "So you're someone from the 1,000 Corpse sect? No wonder I kept having a familiar feeling." What? Luo Jifeng was greatly shocked. How could you possibly know of our sect's existence? Nonsense, you used the 1,000 Corpse sect's secret technique right in front of me, and if I still couldn't recognize it, then what would I need these eyes for? Ling Han scoffed. Luo Jifeng was extremely gloomy. The 1,000 Corpse sect had already disappeared for several tens of thousands of years, and in the last 10,000 years the martial arts sect even suffered a huge blow, causing a gap in their inheritance. In this era, there shouldn't be anyone who could recognize the 1,000 Corpse sect's secret technique, so how could a random youngster recognize it at a glance? Brat, you seem to be hiding many secrets. His eyes soon shone with a strange light. A 17-year-old earth-grade alchemist with the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. This couldn't be described with the word miracle anymore. Later, he took out a level 10 spirit tool, and even recognized the 1,000 Corpse sect's secret technique at a glance. There was definitely a huge secret hidden. His heart thumped wildly. If he could take down Ling Han, it might be the greatest opportunity of his life. Don't have such a sweet dream, it's impossible. Ling Han shook his head. You know what I'm thinking? Nonsense, you're almost drooling. Isn't it obvious what you're thinking? Ling Han sneered. Of course, it was impossible for Luo Jifeng to lose his composure to the extent of drooling. He gave a humph. At this moment, the surroundings had already been completely enveloped by his black aura, and numerous skulls surged about. This filled him with confidence. Kid, once I capture you, not only will I obtain all of your fortuitous encounters, I'll also torture you in every possible way. I can guarantee you that you will suffer a fate worse than death. Ling Han snorted and scoffed, You damned eunuch without a dick between your legs. No wonder you raised a catamite and cultivated the evil arts of the Thousand Corpse sect. With so many corpses on your body, your manhood is naturally rotten, and you can only sell your ass. It was as if Luo Jifeng's heart had been heavily punched by someone. Even the skin on his face became twisted, and he suddenly let out a furious roar that sounded like the wail of a ghost. Instantly, innumerable skulls appeared and pounced towards Ling Han. This was his greatest pain. As a man, he had no manhood, and now that it was exposed by Ling Han in front of him, he was instantly infuriated. Damn old dog, I still haven't settled this debt with you. You almost blinded me. Ling Han gave a long howl, and the demon birth sword appeared, unleashing the mysterious 3000. Hong, 700 sword flashes moved in unison. Under the control of the demon birth sword, each flash of sword light actually transformed into a black-armored warrior formed from demon chi, attacking Luo Jifeng. Fuck! Ling Han was instantly stunned. Every black-armored warrior was in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and 700 black-armored warriors attacking together. What kind of concept was that? Even he had not thought that the combination of the mysterious 3000 and the demon birth sword could actually unleash such a terrifying might. Of course, this was also because with the power boost from the Black Tower, his power had soared to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. He had even purposely withdrawn 100 sword lights in order to spare Luo Jifeng's life, lest he killed him without being able to interrogate him for information. Who would have thought that this might was so great that it was practically nature-defying? Hong, 700 black-armored warriors surged past. Not only was the corpse chi that filled the air dispersed, all the skulls shattered, and Luo Jifeng also died without a complete corpse. There was not even the slightest fragment left behind. Luo Jifeng might not be able to withstand a mere black-armored warrior in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. What more when he was attacked by 700 such beings at the same time? Ling Han sighed. This was great, he directly killed the person and the trail was cut off. He changed his mind. Go look for that attendant. He quickly returned and arrived at Luo Jifeng's courtyard. With a single move he captured that attendant, knocked him unconscious, and stored him into the Black Tower. Then he too flashed into the Black Tower and began to interrogate him. I was forced. That attendant was scared half to death, and was filled with confusion and fear towards the space within the Black Tower. No matter how Ling Han asked, the attendant did not know anything. He was only adopted by Luo Jifeng after he came to town. At first, he thought that he had met a great benefactor, but in the end, he was also very disgusted. Thus, he used violence to torment Luo Jifeng every time, but it only made that old dog feel even better. Ling Han could only knock the attendant unconscious again, and then throw him out of the Black Tower. This trail had not been cut off, because Cheng Feijun was still alive. He asked the attendant to invite Cheng Feijun to Luo Jifeng's courtyard. In order to make the latter commit the crime, he carelessly stuffed an alchemical pill into the attendant's mouth, deceiving him that it was poison. If he did not take the antidote within 3 days, he would die from the poison. That attendant did not suspect anything at all, because Luo Jifeng had not returned all this while, making him feel that it was extremely likely that he had been killed by Ling Han. When he thought that even such a terrifying character like Luo Jifeng had been dealt with by Ling Han, how could he still dare to resist? Not long after, there was a sound from the courtyard's main door, and the sound of 2 footsteps entered. How come it's you? When Cheng Feijun saw Ling Han, he could not help but reveal an extremely shocked expression. Here there was no one that he could not accept as much as Ling Han. Ling Han humphed and said, I am the disciplinary elder. Why are you not kneeling upon seeing me? Cheng Feijun was startled by his bluff. After hesitating for a moment, he immediately revealed a ferocious glint, and said, You are deceiving me, Lord Luo. He exclaimed, How troublesome. Ling Han moved, knocking him unconscious with a palm, and then turned his gaze towards that attendant. "I'll do it myself," the attendant said hurriedly, knocking against the wall and fainting with a dong. He really had a clear mind. Ling Han could not help but laugh in spite of himself, and stored the two of them into the Black Tower at the same time. He returned to the inn, and once again entered the Black Tower, beginning to interrogate Chung Fei-jun. "Ling Han, how dare you? Even if you are an Earth-grade alchemist, privately detaining another alchemist is still a heavy crime." Chung Fei-jun shouted fiercely once he woke up. "Since when has even the remnants of the Thousand Corpse sect become so arrogant?" Ling Han shook his head. "What nonsense are you spouting? Who is the remnant of the Thousand Corpse sect?" Chung Fei-jun's expression changed, but he countered with a question. "Less nonsense, quickly let me go. You entered my space and still want to leave?" Ling Han smiled faintly, and his figure floated into the air. With a casual wave, a large mountain rose from the ground, evolving the changes of heaven and earth. "Pooh!" Chung Fei-jun instantly spluttered, his eyes staring blankly as if he had become an idiot. "This is an illusion, this is an illusion," he muttered, his whole body trembling. "Pa!" Ling Han slapped him, and Chung Fei-jun immediately cried out in pain. This was definitely not an illusion. Chapter 311. Xiao. A strong chi sliced over from outside the valley, turning into a sharp blade that was 3,000 meters long, extremely terrifying. Everyone's faces turned green with fear. This strong chi was too long, and it was impossible to dodge to the left or right nor upwards. It was a strike from the demonic ape, and even if they weren't directly cut, under the terrifying rising power, with their spiritual pedestal tier and spiritual ocean tier strength, they would definitely be shattered. "Dig a hole." Someone immediately bombarded the ground. There had always been a saying of the shield of earth, and hiding in the soil might be able to avoid the disaster. Everyone followed suit, bombarding the ground madly. The people here were at least in the spiritual ocean tier, and blasting a hole in the ground was a simple task. In an instant, everyone became rats on the ground, drilling into the holes in the soil one after another. The strong chi streaked past, pung pung pung, raising a cloud of dust on the ground. The terrifying energy swept out, slicing the mountain wall before disappearing. This mountain wall was also extraordinarily sturdy. Receiving the demonic ape's attack, it actually didn't completely slice off, but only left a mark that was not even a foot deep, truly shocking. Everyone hiding in the soil was forcibly sent flying out, all of them spewing blood. A few people who were too weak were even directly shaken into bloody foam, but most people still managed to survive. People like Zhu Xian'er, Xian, and the others all walked towards Ling Han. The reminder just now was precisely from him. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "No need to thank me. Although there were some enemies here, he had absolutely no need to rely on the demonic ape to kill them. Could it be that he didn't even have this bit of confidence? Besides, some people weren't bad. It would be a pity if they died here. Quickly leave this place." The rescued people, regardless of whether they knew each other or not, all nodded at Ling Han, then ran out of the valley one after another. Being affected by the demonic ape's attack caused them to be heavily injured, and if it were to be hit a few more times, they'd definitely be finished. Moreover, this mountain wall was so sturdy that it was impossible for them to penetrate it with their strength. So there was only one way to obtain the heavenly luck stone: kill the demonic ape. Fortunately, when their own outstanding junior was attacked, the flower blossom tier elites outside the valley also began to risk their lives, restraining the demonic ape and not letting it have another chance to unleash a killing move. When Ling Han saw that most of the people in the valley had fled, he said to Hu Niu, "Niu, can you go in?" Hu Niu was a freak. Others couldn't do anything, but maybe she could. Let Niu try. Hu Niu squatted at the entrance of the cave, opened her mouth and bit down. With a kacha, bright vein-like patterns immediately shone at the entrance of the cave. Once it was touched, the power laid down by the demonic ape would automatically appear. The little girl, however, went berserk and bit left and right, actually devouring all the vein-like patterns in the vicinity. Holy shit! Even if Ling Han knew that Hu Niu was extraordinary, being a freak to such an extent still made the corner of his mouth twitch, unable to accept it. That was a power defense laid down by the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier. and a king among demonic beasts, yet it was still bitten through by Hunyao. What kind of teeth did she have? After biting out a small hole, Hunyao immediately crawled in and ran inside with pa 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 pa. She knew what Ling Han wanted. In a short while she ran back from the cave, crawled out of the cave, and threw herself into Ling Han's arms, handing over 9 pearl-like things. Immediately a strong fragrance assailed the nostrils, making all the pores on one's body open. It was indescribably comfortable. Heavenly Luck Stone. Ling Han hurriedly stored the 9 heavenly luck stones into the black tower, then picked up Hunyao and slowly walked out of the valley. Just now, he used his own body as a cover, so no one discovered that Hunyao entered the valley. And who would have thought that Hunyao actually had such great ability, being able to bite through even the power defense laid down by a flower blossom tier warrior. Now everyone was paying attention to the battle in the sky. As long as the demonic ape was killed, then they would naturally be able to enter the cave and obtain the heavenly luck stone. Ling Han's heart thumped rapidly. He only knew that there were heavenly luck stones in the cave, but he didn't think that there were as many as 9, which meant that he could create 9 geniuses. 1 for him, 1 for Hunyao, 1 for Ling Dongxing, 1 for Lu Yutong, and 1 for Qin Yi. These 5 definitely had to be used, and Guang Yuan, Zhu Wujiao, and Li Xichan's martial arts talent wasn't outstanding, so wouldn't it be a bit of a waste to give it to them? Forget it, everyone could only take 1 heavenly luck stone anyways, and it was useless to have more. If he didn't give it to them, who would he give it to? Spending it on his own people would be the best use of it. It was decided then. However, after a while, he'd already made up his mind. As for how he was going to use the remaining one, he'd think about it later. Maybe he'd take it out for auction and make a ruthless profit. After exiting the mountain valley, he saw that Zhu Xian'er was looking at him with a complicated and surprised gaze. Presumably, it was his reminder that saved her life, but now he had to compete with her for the crimson red chilling ice grass, so she definitely felt complicated. Previously, Ling Han was only in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, but now he shockingly stepped into the 7th layer. This advancement was too frightening, wasn't it? Ling Han's heart leaped out, and his killing intent soared. Ling Han smiled and said, "I just saved your life, and now you're repaying kindness with ingratitude." Startled, Ling Han swept his gaze around and saw that many people were staring at him with unfriendly expressions. Knowing that he'd angered the crowd, he immediately snorted, took a few steps back and said, "I'll spare you this time, but the next time we meet, I'll definitely take your head." Ling Han only laughed. The next time they met, he'd probably already broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier, and at that time, who knew who'd run and who'd chase after him? However, the battle in the sky was becoming more and more disadvantageous for the humans. The demonic ape was too powerful, and unlike the other beasts in the forest, it was indeed bloodthirsty and belligerent, but its intelligence wasn't affected. This meant that it only gained the benefit of increased lethality, and its battle prowess naturally increased. "Retreat, everyone, retreat!" a flower blossom tier elite shouted. They were going to suffer defeat in this battle, and the only plan now was to retreat first, then gather more elites to come over. This time, even a spiritual infant tier elite would be alarmed. Ling Han didn't care. Anyways, the heavenly luck stone was already in his hands, so retreat was retreat. He'd go guard the crimson red chilling ice grass, and when he reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, he'd use the Black Tower's power installation to take away this stock of spirit medicine, not wasting the benefit of the power installation to increase his physique. Wait! With a long howl, a figure shot over, high up in the sky, yet emitted a domineering aura that intimidated the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Extremely shocking. There were lines of vein-like patterns blossoming around his body, and they were like blooming celestial flowers. The scene was astonishing. At first, Ling Han thought it was Yao Huiyu. Only such a domineering youngster could release such a powerful aura, but when he focused his eyes, he could faintly see that this was a man in the prime of his 30s, brimming with a natural might, as if he was a natural-born emperor. Ling Han's mouth slowly opened, revealing a shocked expression. This person was actually... Chapter 312. After that, an ordinary-looking old man appeared and entered another private room. The most important thing for the Spirit Treasures Pavilion to do business was to level the playing field, so these two people being able to enter a private room on the 5th floor meant that they or the force they represented, were at least not weaker than a low-level Earth-grade alchemist. That old man was in the flower blossom tier. Ling Han was a bit surprised. Today's auction actually attracted an elite of the flower blossom tier. Really not simple. People continuously entered, and not long after, he heard a very distinctive voice. "Fairy Chi, what a coincidence to meet you again. We really are fated, why don't we sit together?" From the day before yesterday until now we've met a total of 17 times. So 17 times. So many times, then we're definitely fated. Fairy Chi, don't you and I look a bit more abnormal today? Get lost. Ling Han looked down from the window and saw Gu Fenghua chasing after Chi Hualan. This freak was grinning from ear to ear, his buttocks bouncing. These two also went upstairs, but did not come to the 5th floor. Obviously, they were not qualified to sit in a private room here. As for whether they were on the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th floor, Ling Han was not so free that he activated the Eye of Truth to search. As it turned out, the young people of the 9 nations of the desolate north were the foreign martial artists that had arrived. In the private room, Guang Yuan and the others were very fresh. Normally, they did not have the right to enter such a private room, even if the furnishings around them were not shocking. However, as they walked around and touched here and there, they had a different feeling. Lu Yutong and Li Sichuan were both girls, so they naturally had to pay attention to their image. Thus they sat properly. Hun Yo, on the other hand, did not care so much. She clung to Ling Han's arms and giggled happily. After a while, the auction finally began. Ling Han was bored, so he lay down and slept, while Hun Yo continuously teased him with her small hands. One big and one small were very happy, making Lu Yutong and Li Sichuan extremely envious, wanting nothing more than to take their place. The two girls looked at each other and nodded. They felt that they couldn't be careless just because Hun Yo was young. This little girl couldn't be underestimated, and after another 10 years the little girl should have grown into a big girl. At that time it would be too late to be on guard. Fire, theft, and tigress. Ladies and gentlemen, the item that we are going to present to you now is a treasure from the ancient era. It has an incomparably symbolic meaning. The auctioneer's spittle flew as he spoke. That is the alchemy cauldron that Grandmaster Ling Han, the man who created the 3-fire guide technique and was known as the Alchemy Emperor, had once used. Ling Han, Guang Yuan, Lu Yutong, and the others all walked towards Ling Han. They could naturally tell that this Ling Han was not this Ling Han, but the two of them actually had the same name, and were both geniuses of the Tao of Alchemy. They couldn't help but click their tongues in wonder. "Haha, I heard that there is also a person called Ling Han here." A cold voice was suddenly heard from one of the private rooms. It was a very old voice. "You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, actually daring to have the same name as the former Alchemy Emperor. Haha, you indeed overestimate yourself. It's not strange to have the same name, but what kind of achievements did great alchemist Ling Han of 10,000 years ago have? To have the same name as him, you really deserve to die." This was the voice of a woman. The voice was tender, but filled with ridicule. Though it was impossible to tell which private room these two voices came from, it was certain that they came from the 5th floor, which instantly made Ling Han think of the cloaked woman and the old man in the flower blossom tier that he had seen before. Ling Han didn't know whether to laugh or be angry because both of them were him, but one was praised to the top of the clouds, while the other was stepped on underfoot, which made him feel like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What a coincidence! Who asked the two of them to have the same name? Small Tower wouldn't have done it on purpose, right? Humph, I don't know who that Grandmaster Ling of 10,000 years ago was, but the current Ling Han is only 17 years old, yet is already an Earth-grade alchemist. He could be called an alchemy genius anywhere. Is this also called overestimating yourself? Lu Yutong was unhappy, and immediately defended Ling Han. Li Sichuan nodded and said, "I'm also an alchemist, and know some things about that Grandmaster Ling of 10,000 years ago." Li Sichuan nodded as well and said, "I'm also an alchemist, so I do know some things about that Grandmaster Ling from 10,000 years ago. That Grandmaster only became a low-level Earth-grade alchemist when he was 30 years old. After that, he became a middle-level Earth-grade in 10 years, high-level Earth-grade in 20 years, and finally became a Heaven-grade alchemist in 30 years. He was also the youngest Heaven-grade alchemist in history. Then, he broke through the limit of Heaven-grade in 50 years, and was honored as the Alchemy Emperor. These words were the truth, without any exaggeration at all. The ancient records recorded it like this. But when put together with Lu Yutong's words just now, it couldn't be any more obvious. 10,000 years ago, Ling Han only became an Earth-grade alchemist when he was 30 years old, but the current Ling Han was 17 years old. To say nothing of his future accomplishments, merely comparing the present Ling Han was definitely superior to the current Ling Han. Thus, the old man and the woman in the two private rooms were momentarily speechless. Who asked Ling Han to be younger? Ling Han, however, laughed and shook his head. He possessed all the memories of his previous life, which meant that he was standing on the foundation of his previous life and moving forward, so he definitely had to surpass his previous life. How could these two be compared together? However, it was strange. In his previous life, though Ling Han was called the Alchemy Emperor, he had already died for so many years, so why were these two still so respectful? Most alchemists knew that two Ling Han had the same name, but they had never seen anyone criticize Ling Han because of this. It was inexplicable, and it was two people at that. Esteemed guests, please don't hurt the harmony. Let's auction this alchemy furnace. As I said just now, this is an alchemy furnace used by the ancient Grandmaster Ling Han. The materials used are of the highest quality, but unfortunately, it's already damaged. Thus, it can only be used as an ornament and as a souvenir. The auctioneer hurriedly adjusted the atmosphere. He paused, then said, an item used by the ancient Grandmaster Ling has great significance, so we naturally can't sell it cheaply, or else it would be disrespectful to Grandmaster Ling. Thus, the starting price of this alchemy furnace is 1,000 origin crystals. 2,000. 3,000. 5,000. Just as he finished speaking, someone started to raise the price. From the voices, it was obvious that it was Long Yongzhang and the other two big shots of alchemy. True, the ancient Ling Han's reputation was too resounding. The items he used were totems, spiritual pillars, and had incomparable symbolic significance to alchemists now. In just a short while, the price shot up to 10,000 and it was still rising. Very soon, it broke through the 50,000 mark. Ling Han was shocked. Could it be that Long Yongzhang and the other two had come for the alchemy furnace that he had used in the past? To be honest, that alchemy furnace was indeed a good item. It was forged from purple moon and stars iron, and its heat conductivity and pressure resistance were all excellent. However, it was already damaged and could no longer be used for alchemy. Moreover, it looked extremely damaged. Even if the materials were taken back and refined again, there wouldn't be much left. Thus, the true value of this alchemy furnace was only about 10,000 origin crystals, but now, it had already exceeded that by several times. Chapter 313. This alchemy furnace that Ling Han had once used, and now only had symbolic significance, was still soaring in price, and very soon crossed the threshold of 100,000 origin crystals. However, the three big bosses of alchemy had no intention of giving up, and continued to increase the price, as if they wouldn't stop until they emptied out all their savings. The three alchemists have true love for the Grandmaster Ling Han from 10,000 years ago, Guang Yuan said ruefully. Yes, it's already over 100,000 origin crystals. How much higher is the price? Zhu Wujiu also nodded. Ling Han's expression instantly darkened. He didn't need such true love. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan thought that Ling Han was in a bad mood because he was inferior to the Ling Han from 10,000 years ago, and hurriedly comforted him. Hunyo was much more direct, kissing him on the cheek and giggling. However, Long Yongzhang and the other two had no intention of stopping. The price soared to 200,000, and was advancing towards 300,000, which made people speechless. Firstly, it was the determination of the three big bosses, and secondly, it was the wealth of alchemists. 300,000 origin crystals, what kind of concept was that? Even for the three big bosses of alchemy, 300,000 origin crystals would probably be a huge loss. After all, they usually concocted black-grade alchemical pills, and black-grade alchemical pills were usually sold with gold and silver. The three alchemists were definitely still trying to break through to become earth-grade middle-level alchemists, and every time they failed, the materials consumed would be at an astronomical price. They were definitely bought with origin crystals. Thus, these three being able to save 300,000 origin crystals was indeed awesome, but they had probably reached their limit. As expected, after reaching 300,000, The three big bosses of alchemy seemed to lack confidence. In the end, the price was fixed at 332,853 origin crystals. Why was there a fraction? That was because Long Yongzhang and the other two were really going all out, taking out all the origin crystals they had on them. Now that the highest price was set by Li Siyuan, he couldn't help but look happy. He could finally win the alchemy furnace that the alchemy emperor had once used. This was a totem, a symbol. Are there any more bids? The auctioneer asked. He was shocked to see such a high price, but it was also reasonable. They were shocked because it was just a shabby pill furnace. However, who asked it to be used by the alchemy emperor? In the eyes of his believers, forget 300,000, even 1 million wouldn't be an exaggeration. 400,000. Just at this time, a young and pleasant female voice rang out. Her words were spoken lightly, but it caused everyone to jump. This was 400,000 origin energy crystals, not 400,000 gold and silver. Ling Han clearly heard that this woman was one of the two people who had ridiculed him just now. Previously, he was still wondering why the two of them didn't say a word during the auction since they worshipped him so much. It turned out that they were so confident that they would directly kill him. After competing for so long, she naturally knew the bottom line of Long Yongzhang and the other two. Thus, she could beat them with a single price and save as much money as possible. 500,000. Another voice rang out, hoarse and ancient. It was the other person who had mocked Ling Han earlier, the old man. 600,000. The woman didn't mind raising the price, as if this 600,000 was just a piece of paper. 700,000. The old man wasn't afraid to fight. 900,000. This time it was Long Yongzhang's voice. It should be the three alchemy giants joining hands and pooling all the origin crystals together. 1 million. The woman and the old man spoke at the same time. 1,500,000. The woman paused, then directly called out a sky-high price. She seemed to be very impatient and didn't want to increase the price bit by bit. 2 million. The old man wasn't afraid either. Two super rich people. At the beginning, who would have thought that the true competitors for this pill furnace would actually be the two of them? Not to mention their status, just being able to take out 2 million origin crystals was enough for them to sit in the private room on the 5th floor. To the Spirit Treasures Pavilion that did business, having money was the father. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh and murmured, "I've used quite a few pill furnaces now. Should I consider selling them all?" This caused Lu Yutong and the others to laugh. They thought he was mocking himself, but who would have thought that the two Ling Hans were actually the same person? After the price reached this height, even Long Yongzhang and the others could only be guests. They were all very regretful. This was a pill furnace used by the alchemy emperor. If it could be left in the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, then it could definitely make this place the holy land of all alchemists. However, they didn't know that as long as Ling Han once again reached the apex in the future, this place, as an important location for Ling Han to become an Earth-grade alchemist, would definitely become the holy land of alchemists. 300,000 two-star origin crystals. The woman raised the price again, instantly giving everyone a fright. In theory, if the grade of origin crystals increased by one level, the price would indeed increase tenfold, but in reality, no one was willing to spend high-level origin crystals like money. Let's put it this way. If the same amount of one-star origin crystals could allow one to complete a breakthrough in 3 years, then two-star origin crystals would only need 1 year. Right time, that was the most important thing. Especially for martial artists below the flower blossom tier, they only had a lifespan of 100 years, so the younger one broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier, the more time they had to break through to the flower blossom tier. Once they crossed over, they would be able to shed their mortal body. One-star origin crystals were refined by spiritual ocean tier martial artists, and were extremely helpful to the cultivation of body refining, poly, gushing spring and spiritual ocean tier martial artists, being able to provide enough origin power. However, for spiritual pedestal tier martial artists, the effects of one-star origin crystals would be greatly reduced, needing two-star origin crystals to display their effects. For flower blossom tier martial artists, one-star origin crystals were completely useless aside from being used as money. Thus, the higher the grade of the origin crystal, not only did it mean better effects, it also meant more uses. Some precious spirit medicines could only be purchased with origin crystals, and even had to be 4-star, 5-star, or even 6-star origin crystals. Thus, the true value of 300,000 2-star origin crystals was far higher than 3 million 2-star origin crystals. 400,000 2-star origin crystals. The old man was similarly calm. Everyone was so shocked that their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. What kind of concept was 400,000 2-star origin crystals? It required 40,000 spiritual pedestal tier martial artists to refine for an entire year. Were there 100,000 spiritual pedestal tier martial artists in the whole North region? Most importantly, these two people were so indifferent, as if they did not care at all. Were they really people from the North region? Ling Han was also very curious. If it was Long Yongzhang and his group fighting over the alchemy furnace, he could still understand, but what were these two people doing? He could not help but activate the Eye of Truth. First, he found the old man. But the old man immediately sensed him and gave a heavy humph, sending out a wave of sound. Woo! Ling Han gave a muffled humph, and a stream of blood immediately gushed out from his right eye. He had actually suffered a small loss from this blow. Flower blossom tear. That was a power that surpassed mortals. Ling Han, Lu Yutong and the others were all greatly shocked. Why did he suddenly shed tears of blood out of nowhere? Only Hunyo vigilantly stared in one direction, which was precisely where the old man was. Obviously, the little girl was not staring randomly, but had really sensed something, and had already revealed a fierce expression. Chapter 3:14. Ling Han pressed Hunyo down. That old man was too strong. Even if Hunyo possessed astonishing speed, she would not be able to do anything in front of a flower blossom tier cultivator. The old man could casually release a burst of qi, and it would be enough to kill the little girl. I'm fine. He shook his head and took out a towel to wipe off the blood. He could still feel a faint pain in his right eye, but once he circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, the pain immediately disappeared. It was only a matter of a few minutes, and his right eye had already completely returned to normal. As expected of the indestructible heaven scroll, it could even easily heal such a soft spot like the eyes. After a few minutes of tug-of-war, the cauldron was finally taken down by the cloaked woman, and she had paid up to 1 million 2-star origin crystals for it. With so many origin crystals, as long as I step into the spiritual ocean tier, I'll be able to charge into the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier in less than a month, right? Ling Han said inwardly. The purpose of origin crystals was to create an environment filled with origin power, speeding up cultivation. He focused his gaze to look for the cloaked woman. In just a moment he found her, and what surprised him was that when he found the woman, she just happened to stand up, holding the pill furnace that she had just bought. She was actually about to leave. In other words, she had specifically come to bid for this pill furnace. Since she had obtained the pill furnace, she would naturally leave. Relying on the Eye of Truth, Ling Han caught a glimpse of her face, and he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. This woman was really beautiful, not inferior to Qi Hualan. However, regardless of whether it was this woman or the old man from before, they were not alchemists. Ling Han did not sense the slightest bit of an alchemist's aura from them. There was no doubt about this. As the alchemy emperor, if Ling Han still could not determine whether a person was an alchemist or not, then he should really buy a piece of tofu and knock himself to death. Two people who were obviously not alchemists spent up to 1 million 2-star origin crystals for a damaged alchemy furnace. Why was that? Previously, they had indeed admired their past selves very much, but to say that they were willing to pay such a high price for it was somewhat incomprehensible. The cloaked woman left, and the flower blossom tier old man also left. The two of them had the same goal, and that was only this alchemy furnace. Now that the pill furnace had an owner, they naturally had no reason to stay any longer. He really didn't understand. He could only treat them as true love and nouveau riche. After this great climax, not only did the rest of the auction cause Ling Han to feel drowsy, there were also quite a number of people below the stage who began to doze off as they sat, and some even began to snore. Ahem ahem. The auctioneer hurriedly adjusted the order of the auction, and took out a valuable item to be auctioned in advance. Finally, the atmosphere became lively again. Another half an hour later, an auction item caught Ling Han's attention. It was a statue that looked like a scorpion. It was completely black and emitted a cold metallic luster. According to the joint research of a few experienced appraisers, this should be an antique from 5 or 6,000 years ago. There are even some ancient words on it that are different from the current ones. After deciphering it, it roughly means Scorpio Temple, life and death, reincarnation for 10,000 lifetimes. The auctioneer said, "This should be a token, a key, and it can open the Scorpio Palace of the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms." Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, everyone stood up. All of them had excited expressions on their faces. The 12 Heaven Mystery Realms were one of the great mystery realms that had been passed down in the world. They opened once every 100 years, and the spiritual chi in the mystery realms was so abundant that it made people speechless. Cultivating in there for one day was equivalent to cultivating in the outside world for 10 or even 100 days. Because of this, the mystery realms nurtured innumerable spirit herbs that only opened once every 100 years. Not only were they old enough, but because of the spiritual chi, the quality of these spirit herbs was shockingly high. But this wasn't the main point. The main point was that the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms had 12 mysterious palaces. It was said that the greatest treasures of the mystery realm, cultivation techniques, spirit tools, martial arts techniques, and medicinal pills, were hidden inside. There was once a lucky person who entered the Ares Palace, and his reputation quickly rose. In the end, he became an elite of the heaven tier, and a very powerful one at that. If it weren't for the suppression of the environment of the era he lived in, the whole world couldn't produce a shattering void tier elite. His achievements definitely wouldn't stop at the heaven tier, but the shattering void tier or even shattering void to become a god. And to enter the 12 palaces, one would need a corresponding key. According to our pavilion's research, this should be the key to open the Scorpio Palace, but it could also be an imitation. Our pavilion can't be sure about this because there are some things on this sculpture that we can't be sure about. The auctioneer circled back to the topic. Instantly, a considerable number of people looked disappointed. Thinking about it again, it made sense. If this key was real, then why would it be auctioned here? If it was brought to the middle state, there would be more tycoons there, and it would be able to be auctioned off at a really high price. Even so, there were still a considerable number of people who were filled with interest towards the sculpture. What if it was real? Ling Han, do you think it's real or fake? Lu Yutong couldn't help but ask out of curiosity. Ling Han focused his eyes, and the eye of truth was activated. The sculpture's form immediately disintegrated in his line of sight, disappearing layer by layer. When he saw an item deep within the sculpture, he couldn't help but smile, because it was actually a piece of paper. On it was written, "You've all been fooled, this is a fake, haha." But when he saw the signature at the end, his body couldn't help but tremble, and an expression of disbelief appeared on his face. "What's wrong?" Lu Yutong and Li Sichuan hurriedly asked. "Nothing." Ling Han waved his hand, but anyone could see the abnormality on his face. How could Ling Han not lose his composure? Because the signature was a picture of a naked girl. That brushstroke, he could recognize with a single glance that it was that showy disciple of his, Zhang Yufeng. He wasn't at all surprised that Zhang Yufeng would do such a senseless thing, but what shocked him was that this stone sculpture was said to be something from 5 or 6,000 years ago. But Zhang Yufeng was obviously someone from 10,000 years ago. Even if Zhang Yufeng could break through to the shattering void tier, he would only have a lifespan of 1,000 years or so. How could he last until 5 or 6,000 years ago? Unless Zhang Yufeng had advanced a step further, stepped into the realm of immortals, and became an immortal. Although it was unknown whether immortals could be immortal, Azura Demon Emperor, who had been suppressed for tens of thousands of years, and had been cut into 9 pieces, was still alive and kicking? Zhang Yufeng was still alive, and had become an immortal? Then what about his other 3 disciples? Were they still alive? One had to know that the 4 of them had been taken as disciples by Ling Han back then, either because they had astonishing talent in alchemy, or because they had nature-defying comprehension in martial art. Otherwise, how could he have so much time to teach disciples when he was completely focused on alchemy? If Zhang Yufeng could become an immortal, then his other 3 disciples should also be qualified to do so. Then wouldn't he still have the chance to meet his 4 disciples? Haha, he really wanted to see their expressions at that time. It would definitely be very interesting. Chapter 315. Ling Han only kept a small piece of black stone, and gave the rest to small tower to repair itself. In that instant, the entire black stone turned into flying ash, and the source of chaos inside was completely extracted by small tower. He couldn't help but think that if Azura Demon Emperor entered the Black Tower, then even if he obtained a large piece of Chaos Source rock to make his body, what use would it be? He would definitely be instantly extracted into ashes. Ling Han didn't immediately go to the crimson-red chilling ice grass. He was currently only at the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and had to wait until he reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier before going. If he went there now, he would only be sitting and waiting, which didn't suit Ling Han's personality. Thus he and Hunyo strolled in the forest. There were still many spirit medicines here, and since he had the time, why not go look for them? The harvest was not bad, but in a few days the demonic qi had mostly dissipated. More and more people poured into this area, and Ling Han's profits also plummeted. He stroked his chin, but still decided not to waste time, so he carved on a tree writing Ding Ergo, come and chase after your young master. This sentence was obviously said to Ding Yuan Xian. He still wanted to use Ding Yuan Xian's hand to sharpen himself, allowing him to break through to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier as soon as possible. He walked and carved on the way, believing that with Ding Yuan Xian's ability, he should be able to track him down. And Hunyo imitated him, also carving on the tree. However, even though she looked like she was carved out of jade, the words that she carved were crooked and twisted. She even proudly stuck out her little butt and carved happily, without the slightest bit of shame. Only a day had passed, and as expected, Ding Yuan Xian had caught up. I have to admit, you really have great guts, he said coldly, his eyes burning with fury. This youngster killed his younger brother, and now actually dared to take the initiative to provoke him. He was really going to be angered to death. SSO second in the world, Ling Han said with a smile. SSO first in the world, Hunyo said without the slightest modesty, and patted her little chest. You guys! Ding Yuan Xian roared furiously. His figure pounced out, charging towards Ling Han and Hunyo. His spiritual pedestal shone, making him look like a god. Ling Han laughed loudly, and raised his sword to attack. Instantly 8 flashes of sword qi shot out. Seeing this scene, Ding Yuan Xian was naturally enraged. Ling Han had relied on his pressure to advance into the realm of 8 flashes of sword qi. When he thought of this, he burned with fury. Could it be that this brat had tasted the sweetness of success, and was going to use him as a whetstone again? However, he stared at the demon birth sword. Previously, he only knew that this was an extremely high-level spirit tool, which made his heart palpitate in shock. But later, when this sword was actually able to forcefully shake the 3 lives corpse caskets, everyone, including him, naturally knew that the demon birth sword was definitely not as simple as level 6 or even level 7. Who would not be envious? This sword belongs to me, he said with a cold humph, and his attack was as quick as lightning. Ling Han used all his strength, and launched a counterattack against Ding Yuan Xian. However, the gap between their cultivation levels was really too wide. Very soon he was riddled with wounds, and even his bones were showing. Thankfully, the indestructible heaven scroll was too powerful, and allowed his life force to be maintained at a shockingly exuberant state. It was only when he had lost too much blood, and even his eyes were beginning to blur, that Ling Han began to flee. As he ran, he took out ginseng and other tonics and consumed them madly, and used the indestructible heaven scroll to recover. He retreated as he fought, and was not fleeing in a defeated manner. In this battle he gave it his all, but after 3 days he still reached his limit, and had no choice but to hide inside the Black Tower. At this moment, there was practically not a single piece of uninjured flesh on his body. Even with the circulation of the indestructible heaven scroll, the speed at which he was injured was far greater than the speed at which he recovered, causing him to have 1 foot over the line of death. He hurriedly circulated a drop of indestructible true fluid to recover his body. Very soon, his flesh and blood regenerated, and he completely recovered. After swallowing a few alchemical pills that were helpful for cultivation, he crushed a few hundred origin crystals. Instantly, an endless amount of origin power enveloped him, and he greedily absorbed it. His cultivation level rose slowly. This cultivation session actually lasted for 2 days and 2 nights. When he finished cultivating, He had already quietly advanced into the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Very good, this sparring partner isn't bad. I'm afraid that in another month, not only will I be able to reach the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, I might even be able to rush to the peak of the 9th layer, Ling Han mumbled, unafraid of how depressed Ding Yuan Xian would be if he heard these words. Let's go and find a sparring partner. Ling Han continued to leave words, while Hunyo giggled and helped to leave them, letting her unsightly handwriting wreak havoc on this part of the forest. Another 2 days passed and Ding Yuan Xian indeed caught up again. 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. After sweeping a glance over Ling Han's body, Ding Yuan Xian instantly cried out in shock, his eyeballs almost popping out. He was exasperated. This brat really treated him as a sparring partner. Not only had he tempered the 8th flash of sword chi, he had now even advanced into the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. If he continued to spar with this brat, wouldn't the latter advance into the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier at such a terrifying speed, and even directly step into the spiritual pedestal tier? He was really a bit afraid. Ling Han's battle prowess was too freakish, and perhaps the moment he entered the spiritual pedestal tier, he would have the qualifications to stand on equal footing with him. How could he bear to personally facilitate a fatal opponent? But this brat had killed his younger brother, so how could he let him off just like that? He definitely had to kill him. At least, this brat's current strength was far inferior to his. Ding Yuan Xian didn't know that Ling Han still had the Black Tower, which was the last layer of protection for his life. Otherwise, he would definitely turn around and leave. Just like when he fought with Rong Huanxian, the latter could hide in the 3 lives corpse caskets in the end. At least, a palm strike from a flower blossom tier warrior almost killed him. Do you dare to fight to the death with me? Ding Yuan Xian goaded. Is there something wrong with your head? I'm only in the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and you're in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. I'll fight to the death with you, idiot. Ling Han shook his head, yet took the initiative to attack. The demon birth sword unfolded, and sword chi was like a rainbow. Just obediently be my sparring partner. Your sister. Ding Yuan Xian was extremely furious, and charged towards Ling Han in a frenzy of attacks. Previously, he had almost killed Ling Han a few times, so he was still confident in himself. As long as Ling Han's luck was slightly worse, he would definitely be able to kill the latter. Unfortunately, he was always that tiny bit off. After battling for another 3 days, Ling Han once again entered the Black Tower in a state close to death. After drawing in a drop of indestructible true fluid, he directly fainted from exhaustion. When he woke up, he hurriedly began to cultivate again. His improvement was obvious. He had reached the middle period of the 8th layer, and what was even rarer was that he had come infinitely close to death this time, which allowed him to have a deeper understanding of life and death. Life and death, these were opposites, but the end of life was death, and the end of death was also life. It was an endless cycle, just like Tai Chi. This was in line with the great Tao. Tao begets one, one begets two. Order and chaos, life and death, light and darkness, these opposites and cycles could all be traced back to the source. However, Ling Han's present cultivation level was too low. He could only be inspired but could not comprehend at all. He used this inspiration on the path of the sword, and defined the path that he wanted to walk. Sword chi, sword ray, everyone could cultivate them, but sword heart was different. This was a kind of profound brilliance, and one needed to have their own path. In his last life, the Sword Emperor walked the path of a ruler. With a strike of his sword, the whole heaven and earth would have to grovel before him. The setting sun Saber Emperor walked the path of emotionlessness. Even the sun, the source of life, could be cut down by him without hesitation. What kind of path did he want to walk? Chapter 316. In the eyes of the martial artists of the North region, the 9 nations of the desolate North was the region with the lowest level of martial art in the entire vast lands. They didn't even have a true flower blossom tier cultivator, and only barely had such an elite cultivator by relying on the power of the nation. Those below the flower blossom tier were all ants. In their eyes, such a remote and desolate place was naturally filled with country bumpkins and country bumpkins. But now, not only did a 17-year-old grandmaster alchemist appear, this person could even kill Bao Xian Ran. Although Bao Xi and Ran couldn't be considered a true elite among the younger generation of the North region, he shouldn't have been killed by a country bumpkin from the desolate north. Moreover, this country bumpkin was only 17 years old, and had reached Earth grade in alchemy. There was such a genius in the world, ha ha ha, so it's Grandmaster Ling. Come over tomorrow and ask for guidance from Grandmaster Ling. Someone immediately said. I'll also shamelessly pay a visit to Grandmaster Ling. I'll come too. The youngsters of the North region said one after another, not caring whether Ling Han agreed or not, talking to themselves. Since even the last precious auction item was taken, everyone naturally left. There were many treasures in the world anyway, and this was only an ordinary auction. No one would be too disappointed because they didn't manage to buy what they wanted. After Ling Han took the blue scale beast fruit and 9 rings heaven hero saber, he settled the bill with the origin crystals he'd gathered. As for the debt he owed Long Yongchang and the others, he'd slowly pay it back. Anyways, he still had a large amount of 100-year-old ginseng and Ganoderma, so he'd sell them to Gu Fenghua and the others. They didn't lack money. At first, he was a bit displeased with these people talking to themselves and coming to visit him tomorrow, but since they'd all become potential customers, his attitude naturally changed. He was happy to play with them and settle the debt first. According to Long Changyong, his proof of being an alchemist would be sent over in a few days, so it was close to the time of his departure. Ling Han threw the 9 rings heaven hero saber to Ken Yi, and when he returned to the inn, he entered the Black Tower and began to pull out ginseng and Ganoderma. There were actually many other spirit herbs, but for those who weren't alchemists, ginseng and Ganoderma were still the best. Eating them raw was a great tonic. The next day, Gu Fenghua and the others indeed came running over. Master Ling, I didn't expect you to be so young. Every person who came would say something similar, which made Ling Han's ears almost grow calluses. Ha ha, Ling Han, as expected, you're a pervert. You have some of my flair back then. Gu Fenghua's voice rang out. The moment he entered, he gave Ling Han a passionate hug. However, he immediately moved closer to his ear and said, however, Fairy Qi is mine. If you dare to snatch her from me, be careful that I don't sprinkle itching powder on your underwear and make you scratch every day. This guy let go of his hand, but his face was still filled with enthusiasm. Ling Han gave him a look of disdain and said, You value your lover more than your friends. This is called every man for himself. For my happiness, I can only sacrifice you a little, Gu Fenghua said without any trace of politeness. Brother Ling. Qi Hualan walked over gracefully and clasped her hands in obeisance towards Ling Han. I have yet to repay the favor of saving me in the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, and I never thought that you would already become an Earth-grade alchemist. Hualan really doesn't know if there will be a day when I can repay the favor. Of course there is. Gu Fenghua interrupted. He and I are good friends, so what's his is mine, and what's mine is still mine. So, if you devote yourself to me and marry me, that would be equivalent to repaying Ling Han's favor. Qi Hualan acted as if she had not heard anything, and smiled sweetly at Ling Han, and said, Brother Ling, are you interested in going to the Purple Star sect as a guest? She was a disciple of the Purple Star sect, and if she could pull Ling Han into the sect, then this merit would be indescribably great. A 17-year-old Earth-grade alchemist, even if he did not have the chance to advance to Heaven grade in the future, there should be no problem for him to advance to Earth grade high level. And the sect would spare no expense to help Ling Han advance to the Flower Blossom tier, and with the addition of spirit medicine to extend his lifespan, it would not be difficult for Ling Han to live up to 400 years. A whole 400 years, continuously concocting Earth-grade alchemical pills. How many more Flower Blossom tier elites would the Purple Star sect have? It could be said that a high-level alchemist could completely change the fate of a sect. Yo, isn't little sister Qi reputed to be pure as jade and as clear as ice? How come you're also using a honey trap? Amidst light laughter, a woman with a graceful figure walked over, swaying gracefully. Her figure was graceful and shockingly hot, and her protrusion and fullness would make one drool. How could someone have such a good figure? Fiery red lips, black hair that cascaded down like a waterfall. This was an exquisite beauty, and was filled with a fiery charm. She was like a blooming flower, attracting men to pluck her, even if they would be pricked by the thorns because of it. Lin Xiangqin. Qi Hualan said softly. This fiery beauty was Lin Xiangqin. She bowed gracefully towards Ling Han and lowered her head slightly, revealing a small portion of her jade-like neck. It was snow-white and delicate, like silk and jade, astonishingly beautiful. She was really good at using her own advantage. There were obviously no explicit movements, yet it allowed others to fully experience her charm, making their hearts itch and making them yearn for it. Extreme Imperial Sex Lin Xiangqin pays her respects to Grandmaster Ling. She did not immediately stand up, and seemed to be waiting for Ling Han to go up and help her up. And this kind of opportunity, she was sure that no man would refuse it, right? All around them Gu Fenghua, Su Wentong, and the others all revealed dazed and intoxicated expressions. In terms of appearance alone, it was hard to tell who was superior between her and Qi Hualan, but in terms of charm, she was more than a few streets ahead of Qi Hualan. Of course, there would definitely be many men who liked a pure type like Qi Hualan. Though Lin Xiangqin was only 20 years old, her fiery charm already had the air of a mature sister. Qi Hualan spoke straightforwardly, and immediately humphed, saying vixen. However, Ling Han did not extend a hand to help her up. He had seen plenty of temptations from beauties in his previous life. At that time, he had reached the pinnacle of both the way of alchemy and martial art, and the beauties who were willing to throw themselves into his arms were of even higher status, and there was no lack of fairies in the deity transformation tier. Lin Xiangqin could not help but be surprised, but Ling Han had already turned around and walked away. She could only stand up by herself, rubbing her nose and revealing an expression of dissatisfaction. Lu Yutong and Li Sichuan smiled at each other. Their Ling Han was not a shallow person. If they wanted to obtain his attention, it would not be enough to just seduce him with their beauty. They could only use their sincerity to earn his trust. Grandmaster Ling, how about following me to the Extreme Monarch sect for a walk? Lin Xiangqin was not willing to admit defeat, and immediately caught up to him, asking sweetly. Sure, as long as you agree to one condition of mine, Ling Han said calmly. Hearing these words, everyone could not help but reveal a sliver of disdain. After pretending for so long he was only a pervert. But who asked this pervert to be an Earth-grade alchemist? And his future was limitless. It was really possible that he could have a captivating beauty like Lin Xiangqin. Lin Xiangqin also smirked coldly in her heart, feeling of disgust towards Ling Han, but the smile on her face was like a flower, and she asked sweetly, I wonder what condition Grandmaster Ling has? Help me flatten the Winter Moon sect. Chapter 317. Help me flatten the Winter Moon sect. Once these words were spoken, everyone fell silent out of fear. What kind of existence was the Winter Moon sect? Although there were many forces that could be called sects in the North region, only the 5 great sects were publicly recognized as the strongest, known as the 5 great sects of the North region, and the Winter Moon sect was one of them. Although the Imperial sect and the Heaven Essence sect were very awesome in terms of absolute strength, they were all inferior to the Winter Moon sect. Perhaps only the 3 sects combined could rival them. And to flatten the Winter Moon sect, it would require at least 3 times the power of the Winter Moon sect to defeat a sect that had a great protective array and adopted a defensive stance. In other words, it would require at least 10 Imperial extreme sects to combine forces, and in this process even the victor would pay a huge price. For an Earth-grade alchemist, which force would be willing to do so? Master Ling really knows how to joke. Everyone laughed dryly, instantly losing their arrogance and becoming well-behaved, because no matter how arrogant they were, they wouldn't dare to say something like flatten the Winter Moon sect, whether it was the truth or just a joke. Ling Han, however, didn't care. The grudge between him and Feng Yan was something everyone in Rain Country knew, and they would find out if they made some inquiries. Thus, no matter how ruthless his words were, people would think it was because of Feng Yan, but they didn't know that this grudge also involved the previous generation. If a normal person said something like that, even if the Winter Moon sect didn't make a move themselves, there would be many bootlicking forces that would kill Ling Han. But now, this was an Earth-grade alchemist whose status was similar to the Flower Blossom tier, so how would a normal force dare to make a move? Even a great force like the Winter Moon sect had to be wary of the Alchemist Society behind them. At most, they would beat up Ling Han and tell him not to speak carelessly, but they wouldn't dare to publicly kill Ling Han. Of course, what they would do in private was another matter. One sentence was enough to subdue these arrogant young prodigies. As Ling Han inquired about the current situation of the North region, he asked Zhu Wujiao to take out another basket of ginseng and Ganoderma to sell. These youngsters were not lacking in money. In the previous auctions they could throw out 100,000 yuan crystals and they would be able to get it. Sure enough, even though these geniuses came from large sects and had seen and eaten 100-year-old ginseng and Ganoderma, they couldn't help but feel their mouths twitch when they saw such huge tonics placed in a basket as if they were cabbages. Sigh, compared to Master Ling, we are indeed frogs at the bottom of a well. So many 100-year-old ginsengs and Ganoderma. Grandmaster Ling must have controlled an ancient herb garden. It can't be an ancient herb garden either. This place is filled with 100-year-old medicinal herbs. That's true. About 100 years ago, there was a faction that planted a large amount of ginseng and Ganoderma, but they were destroyed for some reason. However, the herb garden was not destroyed. Instead, it grew well and was discovered by Master Ling in the end. Everyone sighed. This was really luck. Moreover, with the title of an earth-grade alchemist supporting him, who would be willing to fall out with Ling Han just for a bit of 100-year-old ginseng and Lingji? Ling Han could earn as much as he wanted without worrying about being targeted. After all, compared to large factions, this was indeed only a small amount of money. Zhu Wujiao was in charge of collecting money, while Ling Han chatted with everyone and inquired about the North region's situation. After all, what was written in the books was at least a dozen years ago, or even a few decades ago. The general situation of the North region had not changed. The strongest were still 5 factions, also known as One Valley and 4 sects: Bloodflame Valley, Wintermoon Sect, Sanluo Sect, Beast Emperor Sect and Half Moon Sect. Bloodflame Valley was the only faction that did not have a sect in its name, but their strength was considered number 1 in the North region. It was said that they could possibly produce a super elite of the deity transformation tier, and truly sweep through the North region. Although there were 4 regions and 1 state in the vast lands, it was not easy to interact normally. Each region was separated by a natural chasm, which was said to be left behind from the ancient war. The higher one's strength was, the harder it was to cross. Precisely because of this, although the North region only had spiritual infant tier elites to keep watch, there was no need to worry about the other 4 regions invading. Speaking of geniuses of the younger generation, Bloodflame Valley's Wuyuda is only 23 years old, but he's already advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier, Su Wentong said, his face full of envy. He could be ranked at the top of the younger generation of the Heaven Origin sect, but now he was only in the 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, far from the peak of the spiritual ocean tier. Not to mention that the step from the spiritual ocean tier to the spiritual pedestal tier was extremely difficult. The higher the tier of martial art, the more difficult it was to cross a major tier. There was once a genius who stepped into the Flower Blossom tier at the age of 32, becoming the youngest Flower Blossom tier warrior in history, but he spent 122 years to go from the Flower Blossom tier to the spiritual infant tier, and finally died of old age in the spiritual infant tier, not even breaking through to the deity transformation tier, which made people sigh. Even more abnormal than me, Gu Fenghua mumbled on the side. Zuyuda Ling Han mumbled, remembering this name. A 23-year-old spiritual pedestal tier warrior was indeed shocking, and according to what he knew, even Sword Emperor and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden shouldn't have been so awesome. Presumably, it was because the environment had changed, making cultivation much easier for people now. The Beast Emperor sect also has a freak called Lu Yang, 24 years old, and also advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier. Moreover, the Beast Emperor sect raises demonic beasts as beast pets, and if one man and one beast work together, their battle prowess would increase by a notch. Lin Xiangqin also mentioned a genius. The Limitless sect doesn't have any particularly dazzling new stars, but they have a triplet combination. Although they're all in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier now, the 3 of them can kill an early-stage spiritual pedestal tier warrior together, so they can't be underestimated, Qi Hualan said. The young prodigy of the Half Moon sect is a girl, and I heard she's as beautiful as a flower. Even Zuyuda fell in love with her at first sight, sending her to the sect to propose marriage, but was coldly rejected, Su Wentong said with a smile. I've also heard that she's called Zhuxian Air. She's only 22 years old, and also advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier, truly shocking. Lin Xiangqin nodded, unable to restrain her envy. They were both women, but why did Zhu Xian'er surpass her by a large margin? Not only that, but her beauty is also extremely shocking. I once saw her lift a corner of her veil to drink water. Although only a little bit of her chin was revealed, it was enough to intoxicate me, and I wanted nothing more than to die for her, someone added, his face completely filled with infatuation. Those who hadn't seen Zhu Xian'er before were all shocked. Being able to make a young prodigy so infatuated. Then Zhu Xian'er's charm was too great. Moreover, she didn't even show her face, and only a little bit of her chin could make people so infatuated. Inconceivable. I've also heard that a genius from the middle state came to our place to train, and unexpectedly encountered Zhu Xian'er. He was shocked on the spot, and even ran to the half-moon sect to propose, saying he'd bring Zhu Xian'er to the middle state. Guess which sect in the middle state is that genius from? Someone else said, appearing to be showing off. Without waiting for everyone to guess, he directly revealed the mystery, and said, Heaven's Sword Sect. Chapter 318. Oh, Heaven's Sword Sect. These 3 words seem to have magical power, making all the young men and women here feel deep veneration, revealing endless yearning. Close to 10,000 years ago, a great calamity occurred in the vast lands. It was Heaven's Sword Sect, Absolute Saber Sect, Cloud Phoenix Sect, and several other super forces that led their seniors into a bloody battle, finally quelling the calamity and achieving the present 10,000 years of peace. Moreover, Heaven's Sword Sect has a shattering void tier elite overseeing it, practically a living monument of martial art. If it were me, needless to say, I'd immediately run over. Haha, cut off your lower part and do a good makeover on your face, you'll have a chance. Get lost. Everyone laughed loudly, but they had an indescribable yearning towards Heaven's Sword Sect. This was a true holy land of martial art, with an immortal inheritance. Perhaps one day, a supreme being that could break through the void and enter the realm of gods would appear. What happened in the end? Did Zhu Xian'er go to the middle state? Lu Yutong was curious and couldn't help but ask. No, the person who heard the gossip said. I heard that Zhu Xian'er is extremely filial. Her master went mad when he was cultivating a few years ago, so she made a great vow that she would definitely help her master recover. Whoever was able to do it, she would give that person any amount of cultivation resources, and would even be willing to marry that person to a lower status. However, according to a genius doctor, to cure such a Dao wound, only a heaven-grade medicinal pill can do it. So our fairy still has to go to the middle state in the end. Who knows which bastard will benefit from it? When he said the last sentence, he was already gritting his teeth, as if he'd already seen the goddess of his dreams being embraced by some stinky man, and that was heart-wrenching. Shua, all of a sudden everyone's eyes were fixed on Ling Han. Why are you guys doing this to me? Ling Han asked innocently. If there's anyone in the North region that can become a heaven-grade alchemist, it's definitely you. Gu Fenghua laughed loudly. You're so abnormal, becoming a heaven-grade alchemist is just around the corner, and you'll be able to hug a beauty at that time. Let me discuss something with you. Can you give me a pair of Fairy Zhu's underwear? Pung 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 pung. Without waiting for Ling Han to open his mouth, this pervert had already been beaten to a pulp by over a dozen people who admired Zhu Xian'er, and in an instant, he was beaten so badly that he no longer looked human. Yeah, that's Fairy Zhu we're talking about. Lu Yutong was extremely intoxicated. Li Sichan was the same. Only Hu Niu did not mind at all and thought, Ling Han is Niu's a bunch of silly girls. Ling Han only smiled faintly. In his last life, what kind of beautiful woman had he not seen? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was even said to be the most beautiful woman of all time. It wasn't that he had not been moved. However, when she had asked him to concoct alchemical pills for her, he had asked the heavenly phoenix divine maiden to tell him her real name. He didn't know what was wrong with this woman. When he asked her for a name, it was as if he wanted to kill her. Later on, she would come knocking on his door every 2 to 3 days and take the pills without saying anything. It was as if she was the owner. If he wanted to stop her and fight with her, he would be looking for trouble. Ling Han wanted to break through to the shattering void tier so much because he had enough of the heavenly phoenix divine maidens, bullying, and wanted to turn the tables and become the owner. The result was, Not long after, he was tormented and killed by the Black Tower. If the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had entered into the realm of immortals, she would probably still be so beautiful that it would make one's heart flutter, right? Suddenly, he somewhat missed the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, the Sword Emperor, and the setting sun saber emperor. Had these guys died long ago, or had they broken into the realm of immortals? Logically speaking, it was possible that Jiang Yufeng had entered into the realm of immortals, so these guys should have even less of a problem, right? Are you so engrossed in your thoughts? Lu Yutong was jealous, and could not help but pinch Ling Han's waist. However, she saw that Li Xichan also very tacitly pinched the other side of Ling Han's waist, and could not help but laugh out loud. However, Ling Han said, "Then what about the Winter Moon sect? What kind of astonishing genius does they have? If it's the Winter Moon sect, the 7 sons of the Ao family should be the strongest," Lin Xiangqin said after some thought. Ao Feng's 7th son? Ling Han asked. No, Ao Feng has 7 sons, and they're all geniuses, collectively known as the 7 sons of the Ao family, Su Wentong explained. These 7 are all at the peak stage of the spiritual ocean tier, and any one of them could step into the spiritual pedestal tier at any time. The dragon gave birth to 9 sons, and as expected, they were all different. Ao Yangming was only in the poly tier, but his brothers were about to reach the spiritual pedestal tier. Perhaps a few were even more disdainful, and were still in the body refining tier. Ling Han rubbed his chin and said, "Who are these 7 people?" Gu Fenghua shook his head and said, "Ao Feng has too many illegitimate children. Who can remember who they are? Those 7 are the most promising, and are respectively called Ao De, Ao Er, Ao San, all the way up to Ao Qi." This Ling Han also felt like breaking out in a cold sweat. There were too many, and outsiders couldn't even remember their names. Crippling these 7 people, Ao Feng would probably be heartbroken, right? When he thought of the pain that Ling Dongxing had suffered, Ling Han could not help but grit his teeth in hatred. Ao Feng had to be the last one to be killed, so that he would have a taste of that heart-wrenching pain before he died. Very smoothly, he sold large amounts of 100-year-old ginseng and Ganoderma, earning him almost 400,000 origin crystals. With so many people in the 9 nations of the desolate north, they only spent a few 100,000 origin crystals, but there were only a dozen or so people here, yet they bought almost 400,000 origin crystals. It could be seen how rich the people of the north region were. Comparing oneself to others was infuriating. Everyone chatted for a bit, and naturally left one after another. Ling Han also went to the Star Brilliance Pavilion to return the origin crystals he owed Long Yongzhang and the others. He originally thought that if he didn't have enough money, he could use the 7 turns break crisis pill to make up for it, but he didn't think that the people of the north region would be so helpful. After Chang Feijun disappeared for 2 days, he finally attracted the attention of the Star Brilliance Palace Hall. They sent people to search for this young master, but how could they possibly find him? At first, there were people who suspected that it had something to do with Ling Han, but it was soon clear that Chang Feijun was called over by Luo Jifeng's attendant. But now, not only was Chang Feijun missing, even Luo Jifeng and his attendant were missing, so it naturally had nothing to do with Ling Han. Ling Han decided to add fuel to the fire and spread the news that Luo Jifeng was a disciple of the Thousand Corpse sect, making the vast lands wary of this evil sect. The Thousand Corpse sect could even do something like destroying the desolate north, so it was not impossible for them to destroy the north region, or even the entire vast lands. He had Guang Yuan, Zhu Wujiao, and the others spread the news. As long as they casually mentioned it in places like tea houses and restaurants, this kind of gossip would quickly spread throughout the world as if it had wings. As expected, it had only been a few days, and the news of the Thousand Corpse sect had spread everywhere in the small town. How terrifying this force was, wanting to turn the entire vast lands into a land of corpses. In the process of spreading, the news would definitely be processed, so the more the Thousand Corpse sect spread, the more evil it became. It was practically complete. Ling Han, however, felt that this was very good. The Thousand Corpse sect indeed needed to be more vigilant. This force was too evil. Chapter 319. As far as Ling Han was concerned, there was nothing more important than obtaining the crimson red chilling ice grass on this journey. For this stock of spirit medicine, he was even willing to exchange the heavenly luck stone, and the primal chaos source stone. He endured immense pain, yet acted as if he did not feel it. The body of rock cliff could cut off the feeling of pain, and the indestructible heaven scroll could fully protect his life force. Added with the protection of the thunder battle armor, he was qualified to continue advancing. The Rain Emperor and Yao Huiyu both looked shocked. In terms of pure defense alone, Ling Han was already above them, but in battle defense was dynamic because a powerful attack was also a form of defense, forcing the opponent to be unable to attack. Then even if one's own defense was slightly weaker, what did it matter? What they were shocked about was the battle armor on Ling Han's body. It was too shocking, actually being able to increase the static defense close to the peak stage of the Flower Blossom tier, protecting Ling Han in all aspects. But for some unknown reason, they kept feeling that this battle armor seemed to have some flaws. This was because a hole had been blasted through the thunder battle armor, and that was why there was a faint feeling of disharmony. It was fine at lower cultivation levels, but the higher one's cultivation level was, the more this flaw would be magnified. After all, it was not a perfect and flawless level 10 spirit tool. Meanwhile, Zhu Xianer's beautiful eyes lit up. She hoped very much that Ling Han would be able to successfully pluck it. As long as he could pluck it, there would be room for negotiation. Ling Han did not care what others thought. He simply strode forward, wanting to make use of this chance to pluck the crimson-red chilling ice grass as much as possible. Otherwise, he could only wait until he had advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier before using the power boost from the Black Tower again. However, he still wanted to suppress his cultivation level and completely perfect this tier later on. He did not plan to break through quickly, so if he could make use of this chance to obtain the crimson-red chilling ice grass, that would naturally be the best. Moreover, this kind of test was also an opportunity for him. 4 meters, 3 meters, 2 meters, 1 meter of spirit grass was within his reach, but Ling Han revealed an expression of pain. The might of this flame was too terrifying. Even if he had cut off his sense of pain, he still could not avoid it completely because his divine sense also felt as if it was on fire, making him feel extremely uncomfortable. He had to, as soon as possible. Ling Han took another step forward, and finally arrived by the side of the spirit grass. However, he did not pluck the grass, but instead drew out the demon birth sword, intending to dig out this spirit grass. As long as it could be stored into the Black Tower alive, then no matter what kind of environment it needed, it could grow in the Black Tower. Moreover, it could grow even better, and one day could be equivalent to 3 years. This was a level 7 spirit grass, so Ling Han naturally did not plan to only use it once. Chong, the sword struck the white stone below, and instantly innumerable sparks flew, leaving behind a shallow mark. However, the tip of the sword condensed into a layer of white frost, and a chill rapidly spread from the blade of the sword, causing Ling Han to shiver. It was as if all the blood in his body was about to freeze. He planned to slice this rock in half and store it in the Black Tower together. The tip of the sword naturally extended into the cold ground, attracting the invasion of cold air. And the strange thing was that even though the other half of the sword was in the fiery ground, it did not cancel out the cold air, but rather coexisted very harmoniously. After a wave of cold air came a wave of scorching heat, causing Ling Han's blood that had just frozen to instantly boil again, so uncomfortable that he immediately spat out blood. Fuck, this was the authentic double attack of ice and fire. Ling Han bared his teeth, but had no intention of stopping. Ding 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 ding, he used the demon birth sword like a machete, continuously slashing at the rock. Thankfully, this was a level 10 spirit tool. If its level was slightly lower, and it was slashed randomly in such a place where cold and heat intersected, it would definitely destroy the toughness of the material, and it would crack on its own after a few slashes. But even so, because Ling Han's strength was still a shortcoming, the progress of his slashing was not much, and his left hand, left foot, and right foot were already charred, emitting the fragrance of barbecued meat. His right hand was still in good condition because he had activated the indestructible heaven scroll to heal it with all his might, and had given up on the other unimportant parts. Hunyo was very anxious, jumping up and down, but she was also filled with apprehension towards this place of cold and heat, and did not dare to rashly charge in. Moreover, Ling Han could still stand, and was still brandishing his sword, so it was not the worst time yet. If Ling Han collapsed, she would definitely dash over and drag Ling Han out with all her might. When both his legs were about to be burnt off, Ling Han generously used the indestructible true fluid. There were a total of 3 drops which could allow him to fully recover 3 times. Wang, a vast amount of life essence overflowed within his body, and his injuries were instantly healed. Ding ding ding. Ling Han slashed with even more vigor. But when the essence of the indestructible true fluid was completely exhausted, his arms and legs once again began to show signs of being charred. Yao Huiyu and the others, however, were dumbfounded. Just now, such heavy injuries could be instantly healed. What kind of astonishing healing panacea was this? If they could obtain one, wouldn't that be equivalent to having an extra life? Yao Huiyu was still unclear of Ling Han's identity, while Zhu Xian'er and the Rain Emperor nodded internally. As expected of an Earth-grade alchemist, awesome. If this was known to Lu Jitong and the other Earth-grade alchemists, they would definitely burst into tears because how could there be such an awesome Earth-grade alchemical pill in this world? Only the legendary saintly medicine, the 9 divine pill, had such effects. But that was a heaven-grade mid-level alchemical pill, and there was no longer anyone in this world that could concoct it. Ling Han slashed. Ding ding ding, the sounds of slashing rang out incessantly, causing Yao Huiyu and the others to be puzzled. Why didn't he just pull out the grass and leave? Why did he insist on slashing the rock in half? Could it be that he wanted to capture it alive and continue to raise it? Did he have such conditions? They had really guessed correctly, but they definitely would not have thought that there would be a treasure like the Black Tower. Ling Han very quickly used up the second drop of indestructible true fluid, but this time the speed of recovery was obviously slower, and the time it took for the medicinal effects to disappear was also faster. Even if it was such a godly item, it still had a resistance to medicinal effects. True, a drop of indestructible true fluid could practically revive a dead person, and the body would recover to the extent that it was completely unscathed. If there were no restrictions, then it would actually be illogical. When the effects of the second drop of indestructible true fluid completely disappeared, Ling Han had also shaved off about 2/3 of the white rock. He couldn't help but sigh. If he could grasp Sword Ray now, and then use 10,000 techniques returned to 1, perhaps he would be able to slice this rock in half with a single strike. Now there was no other way, and he could only continuously circulate the 4 seasons sword technique. If he used the mysterious 3000, Yao Huiyu would definitely come out, and even the old monsters of the Heaven's Sword sect might come out to interrogate him about how he had learned this sword technique. At that time, even if he could come up with some random excuse, would the Heaven's Sword sect spare an outsider who had learned their sect's sword technique? Thus, before he had enough strength, Ling Han did not want the Heaven's Sword sect to know that he had learned the 3 styles of black origin. Chop 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 chop. In a short while, Ling Han was forced to use up the last drop of indestructible true fluid, and at this moment the white rock was also about to be sliced in half. Ling Han seemed to have gone mad. There was no more indestructible true fluid to extend his life now, so he had to slice the white rock in half before he collapsed. Chapter 320. The cloaked woman gritted her teeth in anger, and couldn't help but say, "My name is Mu Fei Yao. You can find me in the Middle States Cold City." Ling Han couldn't help but smile. This woman was so easily provoked, so she probably wasn't very old. He continued, "You're hiding like this, and you still want me to believe you?" Mu Fei Yao reached out and was about to take off her cloak, but immediately humped and said, "I almost fell for your trick, you cunning brat." Her gaze turned cold, and she said, "If you provoke me again, be careful that I don't break your neck. Then you still need to have the ability to do so." Ling Han suddenly exploded, and turned around to grab Mu Fei Yao's neck, pushing her against the wall of the carriage. Mu Fei Yao was shocked. She was in the spiritual pedestal tier, and even if she was now heavily injured and her ability had fallen to the spiritual ocean tier, she was still countless times stronger than someone in the first layer of the gushing spring tier. But now, she was actually subdued by a single move from Ling Han. How could she believe this? Ling Han's power was shockingly great, enough to rival someone in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. "Which party do you come from, and why do you insist on buying that alchemy furnace?" Ling Han asked. Spending so many origin crystals to buy a damaged and useless alchemy furnace, he didn't believe that this was money to burn. What more when 2 people were fighting over it? "Why should I tell a liar like you?" Mu Fei Yao said, unconvinced. Because if you don't tell me, I'll spank your bottom, Ling Han said calmly. Mu Feiyao instantly trembled in fear. She was a pure and clean young lady, and if her bottom was spanked by a stinky man, how would she have the face to live in the future? Especially when this man had the same name as the Alchemy Emperor from 10,000 years ago. This was a great taboo for them, but she couldn't submit even more. Her pride wouldn't allow it. She gritted her teeth and said, if you dare to run amok, I'll definitely spare no expense to kill you. Ha! Ling Han didn't mind at all. I've changed my mind now. I'll take you to a crowded and lively place, and spank your bottom in front of everyone. Mu Feiyao inhaled sharply, and said in a trembling voice, You can't. You can test my bottom line, Ling Han said lightly. Mu Feiyao looked into Ling Han's eyes. His gaze was clear, but it was filled with wildness. This kind of person would definitely not have any misgivings when he did things. He would definitely do what he said and he would definitely do it. She definitely should not attempt to anger this kind of person. I am a disciple of the Cold Spear Association. She took a step back. In any case, this was no secret. Ling Han was instantly startled. The Cold Spear Association was a little secret between him and his 4 disciples. They had once wanted to create a power, and they had even thought of a name. It would be called the Cold Spear Association. However, before they could officially start, Ling Han had disappeared into the ancient ruins. Could it be that this Cold Spear Association had been founded by his 4 disciples after his death? If that was the case, it would be extremely normal for Mu Feiyao to bid for the pill furnace he had once used. But why did the old man of the flower blossom tier also want to compete for this alchemy furnace? Moreover, the 2 of them even fought, and it was most likely because of this alchemy furnace. Then what about the old man just now? Ling Han asked. He is a fake member of the Cold Spear Association. Mu Feiyao's face was immediately filled with fury. These swindlers, we will definitely exterminate them, and not allow them to roam the world under the name of Grandmaster Ling. Ling Han was even more astonished. There were actually 2 Cold Spear Associations. Mu Feiyao thought that the other was a fake, and the other probably thought the same as well. Thus, both parties were desperately fighting over the alchemy furnace he had once used. But the problem was he had already died 10,000 years ago, so why did they still respect him so much, paying such a huge price for the alchemy furnace he had once used? Could it be that the 2 Cold Spear Associations had both been founded by his disciples? And some kind of conflict had arisen between them, causing them to hate each other and want to exterminate the other? From the fact that they had spared no expense to buy the alchemy furnace he had once used, it was clear that these 2 Cold Spear Associations respected him very much. But since that was the case, why did they have to hate each other to such an extent? Ling Han felt a headache coming on. What had actually happened after his death that caused a conflict to arise between his 4 disciples, resulting in the establishment of 2 Cold Spear Associations, and the love-hate relationship between them? However, these 2 parties were only opposing each other because the other had pretended to be a member of the Cold Spear Association, and wanted nothing more than to kill each other. Then, if he admitted to the identity of his last life, he would definitely be considered a super swindler by these 2 Cold Spear Associations, and be killed to pieces. Looking at Mu Feiyao's current appearance, she had definitely gone mad. She could do anything, so why would she care about his identity as an Earth-grade alchemist? You can leave now. Ling Han tossed Mu Feiyao off the carriage, not having the slightest bit of tenderness towards the fairer sex. Mu Feiyao fell heavily onto the ground. Her face was filled with disbelief. She had actually been tossed out by Ling Han just like that. This detestable guy, don't let me encounter him, or else I'll definitely make things difficult for him. Carrying even more questions, Ling Han finally arrived at the Winter Moon sect. At this time, there were still 2 days before the Winter Moon sect opened their doors to accept disciples. For a large sect like the Winter Moon sect, normally their doors were naturally tightly shut, and people entered and exited through small doors. Only when there was a major event, such as paying respects to the ancestors, or the arrival of an extremely important guest, or the Great Disciple Acceptance ceremony that was held once every 5 years, would the doors be opened. Looking from afar, a giant stone door was locked between the mountain paths, and there were 2 small doors on the side. One could enter and the other could exit. There was an endless stream of people, showing the prosperity of the Winter Moon sect. Further up, there were clouds and mist, as if dragons were dancing in the mountains. Although there was a large city near the Winter Moon sect called Seabreeze City, it was still some distance away, after all, and the time for the opening of the sect's doors to accept disciples was approaching. Thus, many people set up tents at the foot of the mountain, waiting for the arrival of this day. After all, the opportunity was rare, and only came once every 5 years. There were not only young people from the desolate north here, but the entire north region. The Winter Moon sect was one of the 5 great sects of the north region, and if they could enter, it was equivalent to opening an extremely bright door, and naturally attracted countless young people with dreams. If one looked down from a high place, it was really a black mass and there were heads everywhere. Just here alone there were about a few 100,000 people. This number seemed like a lot, but if one thought about how many people there were in the north region, a few 100,000 was really very normal. Just the 9 nations of the desolate north had about 1 billion people, and the desolate north was only a small rural corner in the north region. Ling Han told the others to stay in Seabreeze City, and came to the foot of the mountain of the Winter Moon sect alone. Regarding the exam the day after tomorrow, there was already a large amount of information spread out. First was the reward. Those who entered the top 10 would all receive a great reward. And the reward for the first was a spirit tool called Thunder Battle Armor. This spirit tool was said to have been passed down from ancient times, and in the long history of inheritance, it had already been damaged a lot, so its power was not as before, but it was still a precious treasure. It's actually Thunder Battle Armor. Ling Han was very surprised. Chapter 321. It wasn't strange that the Winter Moon sect was willing to take out such a spirit tool as a reward, because the first in the exam would definitely be heavily nurtured by the Winter Moon sect, and would definitely become a core member of the sect in the future. So this spirit tool only went 1 round, and would eventually return to the hands of the Winter Moon sect. It's actually the Thunder Battle Armor. Ling Han was very surprised. This wasn't the first time he heard of the Thunder Battle Armor. In his last life, the Thunder Battle Armor had appeared, and its owner at that time was the famous Thunder Empress Zixuesian, one of the 7 elites of the Heaven tier in his last life. Although Zixuesian only ranked 4th among the 7 kings in his last life, the 3 people before her were super freaks like the Sword Emperor, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and Setting Sun Saber Emperor. Ranking 4th didn't mean she was weak. On the contrary, aside from Ling Han, the other 6 were all ridiculously strong. And the reason why Zixuesian was so strong was related to the Thunder Battle Armor she wore. This battle armor not only had shocking defensive abilities, but could also release the might of lightning, which allowed her to rank 4th. Unexpectedly, after 10,000 years, the Thunder Battle Armor actually appeared again, and landed in the hands of a small force like the Winter Moon sect. Could it be that Zixuesian had fallen? That couldn't be right. Even if Zixuesian didn't shatter the void and become immortal, she still had the Blue Thunder sect behind her. That was a great sect that still stood tall even now, immortal like the Heaven Sword sect and the Absolute Saber sect. Would they just let a treasure wander outside like that? No, if this Thunder Battle Armor still had the might of the past, then would the Winter Moon sect still take it out as a reward? Such a treasure would even make the elites of the Winter Moon sect jealous. Perhaps it was very badly damaged, so the Blue Thunder sect gave up, so the Winter Moon sect didn't have any elites interested, so they simply took it out as a reward. In any case, it would stay in the Winter Moon sect. No matter, let's get the thing first, Ling Han mumbled. This time his interest was really piqued because even if the Thunder Battle Armor was damaged, it was still a level 9 spirit tool, and was definitely worth making a move on. This time, the Winter Moon sect would recruit a total of 10,000 disciples, and it was not easy to squeeze into these 10,000, because there were countless young geniuses in the North region. Naturally, it would be even more difficult to come out on top among these 10,000 victors. Moreover, what was even more outrageous was that even disciples of the Winter Moon sect below the age of 30 could participate in this exam. Naturally, these people were also aiming for the rewards. Aside from the Thunder Battle Armor, there were also a few other spiritual weapons, a few spiritual talismans, and a few medicinal pills. Even for the disciples of the Winter Moon sect, this was still very attractive. Fortunately, everyone abided by the condition of being under 30 years old. The content of the test was very simple. Everyone would enter Mount Yulong. At the same time, everyone would be given a very small token. In the next 3 days, everyone would have to fight for the token. 3 days later, the number of tokens that everyone had obtained would be calculated, and those who ranked in the top 10,000 would be able to enter the Winter Moon sect. As for the top 100 people, they would have a chance to participate in the second round. Once the top 10 were decided, they would receive additional rewards. The first place would be the Thunder Battle Armor. Therefore, there was a strategy to speak of. Just now, there were already several 100,000 people, and added with the many people in Seabreeze City, the total number of people should exceed 1 million without a problem. This was destined to result in a large number of people being eliminated. However, precisely because of this, some of the weaker people had other values. It was better to sell the token in their hands than to work for nothing. More importantly, participating in this exam was a very dangerous thing. The Winter Moon sect did not say that they could not injure or even kill people in the exam. After this news spread, it caused many people to give up. Since that was the case, why not take this opportunity to earn a small fortune? Participate in the exam, obtain the token, and immediately hand it to the seller after the exam began, then leave. Therefore, the powerful buyers had already begun to take action. They contacted people in private and started to discuss the price. Hi, this Tan brother. Ling Han was naturally disturbed by many people. He had already sent away quite a few sellers, and this time a chubby young man came back. His whole body was covered in gold, silver, and jewels, as if afraid that others did not know he was rich. Ling Han's gaze swept over him. This young man was really rich. Those gold, silver, and jewels were obviously like trash in the eyes of martial artists, but the hairpin he wore was made from ebony wood. The belt was woven from spotted silk and black soaring gold, and the sword sheath at his waist was made from 8 treasures star iron. These were all astonishingly valuable materials that required a large amount of origin crystals to be bought. It was believed that even if it was a personal disciple of the Winter Moon sect, being able to obtain one of these treasures was already very shocking, not to mention that so many treasures were on one person. Ling Han had now disguised himself into a tanned young man, and his appearance had also changed a lot. He was very ordinary, belonging to the type that would definitely not attract attention in a crowd. This brother with a bulging wallet, what business do you have? Ling Han said with a smile. The chubby young man grinned, filled with a feeling of sincerity. He reached out to pat Ling Han's shoulder, and said, brother, the exam will begin tomorrow. Do you want to advance into the top 10,000, or even the top 100? What's the use of thinking? Ling Han deliberately sighed, a bit surprised. This guy actually didn't come to buy tokens. I have a way as long as you can afford it. The chubby young man came over and said in a low voice, I have a spirit tool that can be used at the poly tier, and its power is comparable to the spiritual ocean tier. With this spirit tool, you only need to wait for 3 days and then kill everyone you see. There will naturally be a lot of tokens for you to pick up. Oh, take it out. Ling Han said with a smile. Come, follow me to a place with fewer people. This kind of treasure can't be taken by others, the chubby young man said, pretending to be mysterious. The two came to a remote corner, and the chubby young man took out a red ball and said, this is called Heaven Shocking Thunder Shattering Heaven and Earth. Exploding light ball that flattens the world. Here it is. He shook the ball a few times and then threw it on the ground. Pong! It immediately formed a huge explosion, and its power was shocking. After the smoke and dust dispersed, the chubby young man picked up the ball that he had thrown before, and said to Ling Han proudly, how is it? But this thing can only be used 10 times, so after you take it back, don't use it carelessly. Ling Han smiled. The chubby young man wore a ring on his finger, and it was not a normal ring, but a spatial spirit tool. When he picked up the ball, he had already stored it in his space ring. Then, he took out another ball from his space ring. It looked exactly the same, but it was a fake. This was a fraud. Chapter 322. The plump young man's movements were very, very fast. If it wasn't for the fact that Ling Han had a sliver of heaven-tier divine sense, he definitely wouldn't have discovered the young man's trick. However, with his eyesight, this fake whatever ball couldn't possibly deceive him. Come. Since you're pleasing to the eye, I'll only ask for 10 origin crystals. The plump young man walked closer, and even handed over the ball. Ling Han took the ball and said with a smile, how about I blow you up? And then I won't have to pay a single origin crystal. Though it'll reduce the number of uses, it's still worth it. The plump young man chuckled and said, Tan brother, you really like to joke. Ling Han flicked his finger and this ball shot swiftly towards the sky. The plump young man's gaze couldn't help but follow, and he raised his head to look towards the sky. Ling Han reached out and grabbed at the hairpin on his head, and said with a smile, I don't want this whatever ball, I only want this hairpin on your head. The plump young man was shocked, and hurriedly raised his right hand. Densely packed vein-like patterns immediately lit up on his sleeve, forming a soft white light that blocked Ling Han's attack. With a slight shock, Ling Han couldn't help but take 2 steps back. He felt his right hand go slightly numb, and a spider web-like crack actually appeared. Blood seeped out, forming beads of blood. However, he channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, and the wound immediately healed, instantly becoming completely fine again. Yo, so you're an expert. The plump young man came back to his senses, and stretched out his hand to catch the ball in the sky. He was trying to act cool, and his head didn't reach the sky. He wanted to catch the ball that Ling Han had just shot into the sky, but unexpectedly he had miscalculated, and it heavily smashed onto his head. Ow! He hurriedly covered his head and instantly his image was completely ruined. Ling Han laughed and said, with your outfit, a normal sect wouldn't be able to nurture you. So why did you come here to trick little kids? To tell you the truth, I'm only outwardly strong but inwardly weak. If it weren't for this outfit, wouldn't I be robbed instead when encountering an expert like you? As the saying goes, when walking in the martial world, one has to grasp both, and both hands have to be strong. The plump young man said, without the slightest awkwardness of a thief caught. How should I address you? Ling Han patted his shoulder. As the saying goes, rely on your friends when you're away from home. My surname is Ma, and my full name is Duo Bao. People call me Lord Bao, but since we hit it off, you can just call me Brother Bao. The fat youth said casually. Brother Bao, we can be considered friends, and as the saying goes, for friends of friends of friends of friends of friends of, Ling Han said of. Ma Duo Bao immediately jumped up. You're really greedy. This mysterious jade belt was something that I, Bao Yi, spent a lot of money to get. Also, we're Bao Yi Bao Ge, not Bao Yi. Your surname is Ma, why don't you call me Bao Bao? Ling Han patted the other's shoulder again and continued, this pair of boots is also not bad. Our feet are about the same size, why don't we switch? No. Ma Duo Bao rolled his eyes. I say, why are you even more black-bellied than Bao Yi? Don't wrongly accuse me, I'm very pure, Ling Han said seriously. Pure your sister. Ma Duo Bao hurriedly ran away, and said as he ran, don't delay Bao Ye's time to earn money. Let's go scam some more idiots. By the time he said the last word, he had already disappeared without a trace. Ling Han's expression froze slightly. This youngster was very unusual, wearing spirit tools from head to toe, and he himself gave Ling Han the feeling that he wasn't wearing anything. Nowadays, martial art was in a flourishing age. Not only were all kinds of geniuses emerging like bamboo shoots after the rain, but freaks and perverts also came one after another. He didn't believe that Ma Duo Bao carrying so many spirit tools would be discovered by him alone, but this brat was still living like a fish in water, so he definitely had some tricks up his sleeve that even the older generation didn't make a move on him. A smile also appeared at the corner of Ling Han's lips. He had changed his appearance now, so what if he entered the Black Tower in public and used the demon birth sword? Who would know who he was? Of course it was better not to use it if he could. The most important thing was to get the thunder battle armor, and give the Winter Moon sect a good thrashing while he was at it. Ling Han returned to his original spot, and just when he was planning to rest, he saw a purple-clothed youngster walk over, followed by a dozen or so people, with an arrogance that his eyes were almost growing on his forehead. Hey brat, during tomorrow's exam, you'll join our Zhao alliance and be my subordinate, the purple-clothed youngster said to himself. Hurry up and thank our master Zhao, or else a lone brat like you would definitely be courting death. Someone flattered from behind. Brat, do you know how many famous geniuses will appear this time? Little Overlord Spear Yongchong doesn't know. He'll participate tomorrow. There's also Sword of Justice by Ming. reputed to be able to split a mountain with one strike. The others said one after another. Meeting these people will only lead to death, so everyone has to stick together and unite by Master Zhao's side to survive. Don't think about the top 100. Even the Winter Moon sect will send out young elites to participate, so it's good enough that we can enter the top 10,000. After another 5 years, we who haven't reached 30 will naturally be able to participate in the next exam, and will be able to fight for a ranking then. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Not a bad plan, but a bunch of trash added together is still trash. Sorry, I have no plans to team up with trash. That would lower my standards." Insolence! Those guys shouted in anger, all wanting to make a move, but were stopped by the purple-clothed youngster. It's strictly forbidden to cause trouble now. Whoever causes trouble will be disqualified from the exam, and in serious cases will be killed on the spot, the purple-clothed youngster reprimanded sternly, looking towards Ling Han and laughing coldly. "Black brat, you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Don't let us meet tomorrow. If I don't tear out all the bones in your body, my name isn't Zhao Ri." Killing intent flashed through Ling Han's eyes, and he said indifferently, "If you insist on seeking death, I don't mind killing a few trash. Let's go." Zhao Ri left with his people, going to recruit lackeys again. There were many people like this, and most of them used both strength and money to pave the way, because it wasn't safe to just buy command tokens, as the test would last for 3 days. If they were targeted by someone with strength and robbed, wouldn't that be a waste of money? So, those with some brains already started to find lackeys. After all, there was strength in numbers, and others wouldn't dare to rashly provoke them. Ling Han was alone, and naturally was always targeted by others, wanting to pull him into their own camp. After all, first layer of the Gushing Spring tier wasn't considered weak, and could be considered a quasi-elite among the younger generation. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 323. Shui Guchang was ranked 20th on the Prodigy roll last year, and had the cultivation level of the second layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. But now, he was shockingly already in the 4th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. This was very normal. There were many alchemical pills that could speed up cultivation below the flower blossom tier, and these prodigies definitely had the support of sects behind them, so they were completely capable of causing their cultivation level to undergo an earth-shattering change within a year. And if it were not for the fact that he was worried about spoiling things through excessive enthusiasm, Shui Guchang's cultivation level could possibly be even higher. For example, Zhu Xian'er's information only showed that she was in the 2nd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, but now she had shockingly advanced into the 5th layer. For these prodigies, their cultivation levels would be greatly different every few months, and if they still judged them with the old standards of 1 year ago, they would definitely be deceived. The one ranked below Shui Guchang was Ji Derong. According to the information, Ji Derong had always been unconvinced, so he would challenge the prodigies every time he saw them. That short man just now must have been Ji Derong, and he fit the description on the information very well. As the time of the prodigy tournament drew closer and closer, all kinds of monsters appeared. Ken Yi, Lu Yutong, and Zhu Wujiu all wanted to participate in the prodigy tournament this time. Moreover, they were very ambitious. Not only did they want to be ranked on the prodigy roll, they also wanted to obtain a high ranking, but there was not much hope for them to come now. At first, Ken Ye's cultivation level was the highest, and he also had the highest chance of obtaining a good ranking on the prodigy roll. Unfortunately, he had already broken through to the spiritual ocean tier before he refined the heavenly Lux Stone. Unless he broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier, the heavenly Lux Stone would not be able to be of any use at all. Thus, his current battle prowess was at most on par with Zhu Wujiu, who had broken through to the spiritual ocean tier, and was far inferior to Lu Yutong, who had broken through to the spiritual ocean tier. If he did not have an overwhelming advantage in cultivation level, his battle prowess would not be as strong as Lu Yutong's. As Ling Han thought this, he walked towards Forget Not. It was almost time for dinner. However, when he arrived at the restaurant, he shockingly discovered that a large hole had been blasted out on one side of the restaurant's wall. It was currently being repaired, so there was not a single customer in the restaurant. He frowned and said, "What's going on?" Just now there were 2 madmen fighting. One of them was hit, and his body crashed over, smashing a large hole in our restaurant. Thankfully, only a few waiters were injured, and no lives were lost, Zhu Wujiu said very gloomily. Ling Han was instantly angered and said, "Was there a guy with a short stature who was holding a hammer?" "Yes." Zhu Wujiu nodded, and then asked in surprise, "How did young Master Han know?" Ling Han did not answer, and instead turned around to leave. "Young Master Han, where are you going?" Zhu Wujiu hurriedly chased after him. "Naturally, I'm going to find those two bastards and make them pay for it," Ling Han said with a dark expression. "Young Master Han, those two people are on the prodigy roll, and they are both in the spiritual pedestal tier. One is ranked 20th, and the other is ranked 21st, Zhu Wujiu said in a trembling voice. He had not known before, either, and only found out how great the background of those two madmen was after hearing the discussions of others. Ling Han did not even turn his head and said, "So what? I'll give them a beating first, then drag them back here to work for a month." Zhu Wujiu could not help but shiver. He knew that Ling Han was very fierce, and his battle prowess was astonishing, but there was still a gap of a major tier between them after all. Moreover, Xue Guchang and Ji Derong were both on the prodigy roll, and similarly had the powerful ability to challenge those at a higher cultivation level than them. That was no laughing matter. "You stay here. Someone has to stand guard at the restaurant," Ling Han said in a low voice. "Yes, yes." Zhu Wujiu nodded. When he recalled that Ling Han was an earth-grade alchemist, he could not help but feel relieved. Even if you were the first on the prodigy roll when you saw Ling Han, you would still have to lower your head and address him as Grandmaster. How could he have forgotten about this? He had been worrying for nothing for so long. Ling Han strode forwards and asked around on his way. Xue Guchang and Ji Derong had fought so merrily, so they naturally left behind witnesses along the way. At this moment they were all discussing fervently, and there was no need for Ling Han to deliberately ask around. They were all talking about it. Thus, Ling Han very easily followed the path of the battle between the two of them. But after a dozen or so minutes, he heard from the passers-by that the two of them had already stopped fighting and had returned to their respective homes. Ling Han first tracked down that short hammer-wielding shorty and asked around on his way until he arrived in front of an inn. He shouted loudly, "Shorty G, get out here." The initially noisy inn immediately became quiet. What was going on? Someone actually dared to ask the person ranked 21st on the prodigy roll to get out here? Furthermore, it was Shorty G. Was he trying to stir up a hornet's nest? Everyone knew that though Ji Derong was not the first on the prodigy roll in terms of temper, he was definitely in the top 3. Pung. True enough, an instant later, a window was broken open, and a short man leapt out. Originally, with his stature, it was impossible for him to cause too much damage, but who asked him to be carrying a large hammer on his shoulder? When he crashed into the room, he practically split the whole room into 2 halves. Which bastard actually dares to insult your grandpa Ji? Ji Derong's eyes widened in anger. Being able to remain on the prodigy roll, he was at most 30 years old, but his face was fully covered with a full beard, and it looked like he was more than 40 years old. Ling Han walked over and said, "You idiot! You destroyed my restaurant, so I'm here to capture you and bring you back to be a waiter." Ha 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 ha. When Ji Derong heard this, he was first startled, then laughed loudly. Had he heard wrongly? There was actually someone who wanted to capture him and bring him back to be a waiter. He looked at Ling Han a few more times and said, "You are quite interesting, but you should not joke around with your grandpa Ji. Are you kidding me?" Ling Han leaped over, and with a kick, he aimed straight for Ji Derong's face. "How dare you?" Ji Derong was furious. Though he admired Ling Han's sense of humor, this young man actually dared to kick him. This was really too audacious. He decided to make Ling Han suffer a little. He could at least keep his life and let him entertain his boredom. He moved and casually made a grabbing motion, but his expression immediately changed. That was because the might of this kick from Ling Han was astonishingly terrifying, causing even him to feel a chill. Fuck, was this really a young man in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier? Pung. Ji Derong was instantly and solidly kicked in the face. With a great force, he was unquestionably stomped onto the ground. Pong, a hole instantly appeared in the ground, and his whole head had sunk in. The destructive power of this kick was too great. Even if Ji Derong was someone ranked on the prodigy roll, so what? He had already been knocked unconscious by the force of the kick. His limbs drooped and he looked like a dead dog. Everyone present paled in shock. There was a considerable number of martial artists in this inn. Some had come to participate in the prodigy tournament, while others had come to spectate. Naturally, they all recognized who Ji Derong was. But it was precisely such a young elite that had been knocked unconscious by a single stomp. This instantly caused a considerable number of those who had planned to participate in the prodigy tournament to back out. My God, with such a monster here, what the hell are you still participating in? I'll teach you how to be a proper person at any moment. All of a sudden, the whole place fell silent again. Chapter 324. A day's time quickly passed, and the winter moon sect's once every 5 years disciple recruitment ceremony finally began. Rumble. The huge mountain gate, which had not been opened for a long time, slowly opened. It was too heavy, and when it opened it was as if there was an earthquake. Small stones fell from the nearby mountain walls, and the soil on the ground shook like a carpet. Everyone felt their scalps go numb. This was too shocking. Just the opening of a mountain gate had caused such a huge commotion. A ray of light shot out from the mountain gate. It was indescribably dazzling, causing everyone to involuntarily close their eyes, not daring to go forward. Only when the ray of light gradually weakened and became gentle did it once again pass. At this moment, an old man walked out from the mountain gate. Flowers bloomed with every step he took, forming incomparably resplendent patterns in midair. One after another, they didn't disappear even after a long time. His physical body flew into the air, flower blossomed here. Everyone couldn't help but feel deep veneration. This was an existence that transcended the mortal world. In the eyes of ordinary people, this was actually a god. Otherwise, how could mortals fly and have a long lifespan of 200 to 300 years? Our sect has officially begun accepting disciples, the old man said indifferently. His voice was very gentle, but it was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears. At the same time, it suppressed the voices of the millions of people present. It was very hard to imagine that so many people had shut their mouths at the same time. It was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard, but that was the truth. If the aura of a flower blossom tier cultivator could not even suppress a million ordinary people, then it would be a waste to call him extraordinary. You all know the rules, so I'll just explain it briefly. Now, enter the mountain gate one by one, collect your tokens, and then enter the forest from the two sides. That is where you will fight. Disciples under the age of 30 can also participate, but they can only join on the third day. Fight and seize the token. This is the first step. In addition, you have to rush to the northwest of Mount Yulong within 3 days. There is a valley there called Luoyan Valley. On the third day, if you don't arrive at Luoyan Valley by the time the moon rises to the middle of the sky, you will be disqualified. Therefore, if you think that you have obtained enough tokens, you can go to the Fallen Goose Valley in advance. You don't have to wait until the end of the 3 days. From here, there are a total of 26 roads that lead to Luoyan Valley. You can decide which one to take. Since you are participating in the assessment, you are responsible for your own life and death. Let's start. The old man sat cross-legged in the sky, but a great pressure pressed down on everyone, making them feel as if a rock was pressing down on their hearts. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Everyone stepped forward one by one and received their tokens. Those who were alone immediately ran into the depths of the forest, while those who were in groups waited there. Soon small teams were formed. Ling Han's gaze swept over, and he really did see a few dazzling people. A red-clothed youngster with a long spear on his back exuded an iron-blooded, murderous aura. The cultivation of the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier was quite extraordinary. This should be little overlord spear Yang Chong. Reaching the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier at the age of 24 or 25 was indeed extraordinary. One had to know that Guang Yuan was only at the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier at the time, and now he had just stepped into the 8th layer, but there was a gap of 20 years between their ages. Yang Chong immediately sensed Ling Han's gaze and turned his head to look at him. He couldn't help but reveal a hint of disdain at the corner of his mouth. He continued to stride forward, as if he didn't care about Ling Han at all. And this guy needs to be beaten up properly, Ling Han said inwardly. He then looked at a youngster with a long sword at his waist. Listening to the discussions of the people nearby, that was Sword of Justice by Ming. He was also at the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and his battle prowess was even more unfathomable. It was said that he once killed a bandit at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier with one strike, and had a great reputation. There was also a red-clothed girl with a face like a peach blossom, astonishingly beautiful. There was a large red flower in her hair, making her jade-like beautiful face look tender and alluring. A black whip was tied around her waist, outlining her slender waist to the point that it could be grasped with one hand, making her already proud and impressive look even more majestic. Her raised buttocks formed an astonishing arc. In the world of martial art, the number of females was obviously less than that of males, and beautiful women were even less, not to mention that this girl was also in the spiritual ocean tier. Thus, she was like a magnet, attracting the gazes of countless people in the surroundings. The men's eyes were burning hot, and the women's eyes were red. Listening to the discussions of the surrounding people, this girl was called Si Chi Meng. But as for whether she was strong or not, no one knew because no one had seen her fight. Ling Han temporarily only went to these 3 strong people. There were too many people here, and he couldn't come at all, so he could only go to those that were closer to him. The crowd was too crowded, so after an hour, Ling Han finally entered through the mountain gates and received his token. He slowly and leisurely walked into the forest, and immediately, he felt the gazes of groups of people fixed on him. However, the more calm and composed Ling Han appeared, the more these people didn't dare to act rashly. Who knew if he was pretending to be weak to eat the tiger? The Winter Moon sect didn't say that spirit tools couldn't be used, and adding on the factor of spirit tools, it would make his battle prowess completely unfathomable. However, they didn't make a move, but it didn't mean that others wouldn't. Hand over the token, then scram. Yang Chong walked with large strides and shouted at a small team that was guarding here. The other party was still waiting for their people here and hadn't left. Yang Chong, the exam has just begun, why be so angry? Give me Miao Tai Ning some face and we'll mind our own business, how about it? The leader of the small team walked out and clasped his hands at Yang Chong. You're courting death. Yang Chong snorted coldly and charged out, both fists punching out. How dare you? Miao Tai Ning roared angrily, and hurriedly called for his lackeys to go up together. However, no matter how many dregs were added together, they were still dregs. These people didn't even have the qualifications to force Yang Chong to use his spear. Instantly, 3 people were blasted into a rain of blood by the iron fists, and Miao Tai Ning was one of them. Instantly, the others lost all their fighting spirit and turned to run. All of you stay here. Yang Chong's figure leapt forward, punching 1 person each, instantly annihilating this small group. He said to a young man passing by, "You search their tokens for me." The young man was so scared that his face turned pale and he didn't dare to resist. He hurriedly found the token from the corpses all over the ground and trembled as he brought it in front of Yang Chong. Yang Chong took out a bag and put away the token, then waved his hand and said, "Scram, if I meet you again in one day, I won't make things difficult for you." Thank you, young Master Yang." The young man was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed to express his thanks. Yang Chong ignored him and looked at the other small groups, his killing intent surging. Run! Those small groups immediately scattered like birds and beasts, desperately fleeing into the mountain forest. Yang Chong showed a disdainful expression. His gaze swept over and revealed a strong desire to fight. He said, "You too, do you want to fight with me, Yang Chong?" Bai Ming and Si Qiming had already taken the token and walked into the mountain gate. Oh! Chapter 325. These were 3 powerful geniuses, all in the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, which was quite shocking. Bai Ming looked at Yang Chong without any sign of weakness, and Yang Chong did the same. One of them touched the hilt of his sword, while the other reached for the body of his spear, burning with fighting spirit as if they were going to burn. But in the end they didn't make a move, and only took a deep look at each other before entering the mountain forest. The exam had just begun, and it was too early to make a move. Even if they won, they wouldn't be able to get a few tokens, and would instead reveal their trump cards. It had to be known that there were definitely not only 3 geniuses here. That tanned brother. Amidst the shouts, a fat and round young man practically rolled over, stopping in front of Ling Han and panting. "You're too ungrateful, not waiting for Treasure Master." Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "You actually dare to show yourself? Aren't you afraid of being exposed for your deceitful business and being hunted down?" "Pa, when did I deceive?" Ma Duobao sneered. "Treasure Master has always been honest in doing business. Don't ruin Treasure Master's reputation." "Fine, you still have reputation." Ling Han shook his head. "Brother He, how about we join hands?" Ma Duobao came over. "Why?" Ling Han asked. "You're covered in jewels, do you still need to join hands with anyone?" If he didn't summon the demon birth sword, even he couldn't do anything to Ling Han's spirit tools. "Hee, Brother He, don't you want to do a big deal?" Ma Duobao snickered, moved his head over, and said in a low voice, "Don't tell me you're not interested in the medicinal garden here." Ling Han was surprised and said, "You want to steal the medicinal garden here, you're quite daring." We're kindred spirits, second brother doesn't talk about boss." Ma Duobao nudged Ling Han and said, How about it, Treasure Master is most skilled at removing formations and restrictions, what can you do?" Ling Han scratched his head and said, "Where did you find out that I look like a thief? Why do you think so yourself?" Ma Duobao laughed heartily and said, all right, Treasure Master has been doing business for so many years. Once you raise your butt, Treasure Master will know what kind of shit you're shitting. I already said that we're on the same path, yet you're still trying to be secretive. Are you not treating Treasure Master as a friend?" Ling Han rolled his eyes and said, "We've never been friends. Strangers the first time, familiarity the second. Aren't we friends now?" Ma Duobao looked at Ling Han a few more times. This disguise technique is really not bad. It almost fooled even Treasure Lord. This time Ling Han was really shocked. The other party could actually see through his disguise. He activated the Eye of Truth and looked towards the other party, but Ma Duobao raised a hand in front of his face. There were vein-like patterns on his sleeve that emitted a faint light, yet even Ling Han's Eye of Truth couldn't penetrate it. "Wow, what kind of luck do you have to actually get the Eye of Truth? Ha ha ha, now Treasure Master has complete confidence. You're in charge of the eyes, and Treasure Master is in charge of the hands. I guarantee that not a single blade of grass will grow in this medicinal garden," Ma Duobao said excitedly. Ling Han's heart trembled. This guy could even recognize the Eye of Truth with a single glance. Was he really a young man? He could disguise himself, but why couldn't the other party? When he entered the mountain gates, there was a flower blossom tier cultivator keeping watch. Don't look like he was unperturbed, but if there was someone who had exceeded the age limit in disguise and hid in the crowd, he would definitely discover it at the first moment. Whether one was young or not could be seen from their life force. After 30, as long as one didn't enter the flower blossom tier, the various functions of the body would begin to decline, and life force would show a downward trend, completely different from the exuberant vitality of young people. However, if Ma Duobao was an old monster in disguise, then what kind of cultivation level would he have to be able to hide from the eyes of a flower blossom tier cultivator? Ling Han thought and said, all right, then let's work together. He was also very interested in emptying the Winter Moon Sect's medicinal garden. Yulong Mountain was the private property of the Winter Moon Sect. To prevent people from sneaking into the mountain to dig for herbs and hunt beasts, the entire mountain range was protected by a mountain guarding formation. If an external force forcefully broke through, it would definitely alert the Winter Moon Sect. However, they already entered the Winter Moon Sect, so they didn't have to worry about triggering the formation. As long as they had the ability to open the medicinal garden's restriction, they could easily empty the medicinal garden. The two of them looked at each other and both laughed. They advanced. Ma Duobao obviously did his homework and kept leading the way in front, walking in a fixed direction. Stop, hand over the token, and I can spare your lives. However, after they walked for a while, they encountered an ambush from a small team. There were a total of 34 people and they were surrounded. Are you going to attack or should I? Ling Han asked Ma Duobao with a smile. Treasure Grandpa is only interested in treasures. Keep the token yourself. Ma Duobao shrugged. As expected, this guy came for the Winter Moon Sect's medicinal garden. Scamming people of origin crystals before was probably just his personality, and he probably had the mentality that he'd be an idiot not to take advantage of others. Ling Han smiled at those people and said, It's a robbery now, be serious, hand over the token. Those people were seething with anger. They were the robbers, all right? You insist on using force, brothers, kill. These people all brandished their sabers and swords as they charged over. Ling Han frowned. If these people had only intended to rob him, then he would not mind turning the tables on them and letting them live after robbing them. But now these people were all exuding killing intent, and already harbored the intention to kill. He couldn't help but snort coldly, and his left hand slapped the scabbard. Xiao, the long sword, instantly bounced out, and he grabbed it in his hand. Shua, a dazzling sword light swept out. Pew, 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 fresh blood splattered, and bloodstains appeared on each of these people's right shoulders, dangling powerlessly. The weapons in their hands instantly fell to the ground as they cried out in shock. This pretense is good, I give 10 points. Ma Duobao clapped. In the end, Ling Han didn't kill, and only crippled these people's right hands. It wouldn't affect their movements in the future, but he couldn't be rough anymore. He said indifferently, leave the token, then get lost. These people knew they encountered an expert, and hurriedly took out their tokens and put them together with pale faces, running away without another word. They were only injured now, and if they didn't know what was good for them, they'd lose their lives. They all ran back. Their hands were crippled, so how could they fight? Ling Han picked up the token and put it into the Black Tower. In front of Ma Duobao, who was full of treasures, he didn't mind exposing the fact that he had a spatial spirit tool, but Ma Duobao definitely wouldn't think that it was the Black Tower, a world of its own. On the way they encountered a few more robberies. Ling Han normally wouldn't kill unless the other party went too far, such as directly launching a fatal sneak attack without saying a word. Then he wouldn't be polite, stabbing them to death with a single strike. Half a day later, they finally arrived at a gigantic medicine garden. Chapter 326. Rather than calling this a herb garden, it was better to call it a giant herb field, because there were only some stumps and trees there, wrapped with some cloth strips to make a wall, but couldn't block anything. However, Ling Han and Ma Duobao both revealed cautious expressions. This herb garden was protected by restrictions. It seemed relaxed, but it wasn't, and was filled with killing intent. Little brother Treasure, tell me, how are we going to sneak in without anyone noticing? Ling Han asked. This medicinal garden was very large, and took up half the mountaintop. There were large patches of spiritual medicine planted in it, and he almost drooled at the sight of it. There were indeed many high-level spirit herbs, some he hadn't even seen in his last life. After all, the Winter Moon sect was a super force in the North region. It's Treasure Lord. Brother Treasure. Ma Duobao emphasized. He rubbed his hands and stared at the herb garden. Now use your eye of truth to find a place with the weakest defense. Treasure Lord has a way to open a door to enter, and it can last for a day. However, after a day we have to sneak out. Enough. Ling Han nodded, and immediately activated the Eye of Truth to search. This could break through falsehood and reach the essence, and was the best choice to use to break formations. Wang, streaks of golden vein-like patterns shone in his right eye, and the heaven and earth immediately took on another form. This was a world completely formed from 6 kinds of source elements. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth and thunder elements formed the foundation of this world, and then evolved into everything else. The herb garden's restrictions also completely appeared in front of him, each node without a single secret. Unfortunately, this restriction was too strong. If Ling Han tried to break it now, he'd definitely be instantly crushed to death. However, finding the weakest spot was still easy. He quickly pointed in a direction and said, "There." The two walked over. Ma Duobao took out 3 spirit talismans and muttered something. Wang, 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 the 3 talismans immediately shone, and he hurriedly pressed them in the air. Pa, 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 the 3 spirit talismans seemed to be stuck on an air wall, actually hanging in the air. These 3 spirit talismans occupied 3 corners, and 2 rays of light surged out from each of them, connecting the other 2 spirit talismans together, forming a triangle. Let's go. Ma Duobao's figure moved, leaping over from the triangle, and he had already entered the medicine garden. This triangle was very small. Normally, with Ma Duobao's physique, it would be impossible for him to pass through it. However, he sucked in his stomach, and his huge stomach actually disappeared in an instant. He easily passed through it. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. "Little brother Bao, you've lost some weight. It's quite good. This body of flesh is Treasure Master's treasure. It can't be exchanged for even 1,000 gold." Ma Bao Duo took a deep breath and his stomach immediately swelled up, returning to its original state. Ling Han also leaped into the herb garden. "Hopefully someone won't remove the talisman, or else we'll be turtles in a jar," Ma Duo Bao muttered. Hey, you only have 3 spirit talismans." Ling Han grabbed him. "Treasure Master is so busy, how could there be any spirit talismans left?" Ma Duo Bao said confidently. It was only because he had been doing all sorts of sneaky things that he didn't have time to replenish such talismans. Ling Han sighed and said, "You're too unreliable, aren't you? You just realized?" Ma Duo Bao glared. Hurry, let's split up and leave once we've harvested enough. If you're greedy and stay here, don't blame Treasure Master if you're caught." Same here, Ling Han said with a smile. Ma Duo Bao turned around and left to search for valuable spirit medicine to harvest. If he were to plunder on a large scale, it wouldn't be long before the Winter Moon sect would be alerted, so he could only harvest selectively. Ling Han also immediately took action. There were quite a lot of valuable spirit medicine here. After all, this was one of the 5 strongest forces in the North region. However, spirit medicine above level 8 was impossible to obtain. There had to be a reason why the level of martial art in the North region was low. It was related to the environment of the world, which also restricted the appearance of high-grade spirit medicine, unless there was an extremely special opportunity, such as a shattering void tier corpse, which might have enough nourishment to produce a level 10 godly medicine. Ling Han picked according to the type, dug them up by the roots, and sent them into the Black Tower. Anyway, 1 year in the Black Tower was equivalent to 1,000 years in the outside world. He could soon turn one spirit medicine into a few dozen or even a few hundred. He harvested happily, but not long after, he heard a heavy sound. There was a strong fluctuation of origin power coming from afar, causing the spirit medicine here to tremble. "Brother Hey, the wind is tight, pull." Ma Duo Bao's screams that sounded like a pig being slaughtered were heard. His extremely fat figure also appeared, and behind him was an expressionless old man in the spiritual pedestal tier. "Fuck, why did you lead him here?" Ling Han hurriedly broke into a run. "Treasure Master didn't know you were here," Ma Duo Bao said, feeling wronged. "However, we'll share blessings and difficulties. From now on, you'll be Treasure Master's brother. I'm afraid I'll have to count the money for you after being sold by you." Ling Han decisively refused. This fatty was too treacherous. "Pa, you actually dare to look down on your Treasure Master." Ma Duo Bao was extremely displeased. The spiritual pedestal tier warrior at the back was finally enraged, and shouted, "Two audacious idiots, daring to steal from this sect's medicinal garden. Quickly surrender, or else when you fall into my hands, I'll definitely skin you and pull out your tendons." "Pa, you think your Treasure Master grows up scared?" Ma Duo Bao raised his fat buttocks and gave a heavy smack. He said, "Come catch Treasure Master. Brother Hey, I'll leave this old man to you. Treasure Master has matters to attend to, so I'll retreat first." Shua. His figure suddenly sped up. It was unknown who said that when escaping, one didn't have to be the fastest. It was fine as long as one ran faster than the people beside him. These words were very reasonable. Now, the spiritual pedestal tier old man was getting closer and closer, and was only a few meters away from Ling Han. "You damned fatty." Ling Han cursed and hurriedly drew his sword. With a slash, a stalk of spirit grass was instantly cut in half by him. He then casually struck out with his palm, sending the spirit grass flying towards the old man. "Old ghost, if you dare to come any closer, I'll be in a bad mood, and the things here will suffer," he said with a smile. The old man stretched out his hand and swept the spirit herbs to the side. He immediately revealed a fearful expression. He was responsible for guarding the medicinal garden. If he allowed this place to be destroyed, then even if he caught the 2 thieves, he would still be heavily punished. Anyways, these 2 people's cultivation was so low, so he just let them escape the medicinal garden, and he could attack without any qualms. Once he made up his mind, he slowed down and maintained a distance of about 30 meters from Ling Han, no longer approaching. Xiao xiao xiao, the three of them were like a line flying quickly. The door that had been broken open earlier was already in sight. Ma Duobao was the first to dash out, but he did not leave. Instead, he stood at the doorway and stretched out both hands. In the instant that Ling Han dashed out, shwa shwa shwa, his hands moved in quick succession, instantly ripping off the three spirit talismans. Pung! The spiritual pedestal tier old man crashed head first into the restriction, and instantly, a terrifying power blasted over, sending him flying. He was crushed along the way, destroying who knew how many flowers and plants. Restrain your grief, Ling Han and Ma Duobao said at the same time. Chapter 327. Speaking of which, that person from this morning is even more powerful. He's only 21 years old, yet he's already in the first layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and his battle prowess is as high as 12 stars. What? There's actually someone who can surpass 10 stars of battle prowess. What's that person called? Shuren Ping. Never heard of him. Indeed, never heard of him. According to the information he registered, he came from overseas. Hey, that means he came from the seas outside the desolate north, is that true? Who knows? No wonder I've never heard of him before. Some people came early in the morning, so they didn't miss anything from the beginning to the end. They knew what shocking new talents appeared in the process of registration. Actually, some of the new talents weren't young, but they missed the last batch because of one thing or another, and only managed to catch up this time. This was very normal. After all, the prodigy role was only an empty title. If it was the crucial time to fight for treasures, who would be willing to abandon it and come here to fight with others? Grandmaster Ling. Ling Han and the others were queuing up when they saw some people in front of them greet them and deliberately walk over. Moreover, there were quite a few of them, and they were precisely the few that they had seen previously at the Fallen Moon Gorge. Gu Fenghua, Qi Hualan, Lin Xiangqin, and the others. More than half a year had passed, and their cultivation had all reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, but none of them had broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier. Presumably, it wasn't that they couldn't, but rather that they were consolidating their cultivation. Forcibly raising their cultivation level for the sake of an empty title was like pulling up seedlings to help them grow. It would be too damaging to one's cultivation level in the future, and how could the prodigies that could make it onto the prodigy roll not understand this point? How long could they be proud of themselves on the prodigy roll? The longest would be about 10 years, but they could all advance to the flower blossom tier in the future, and their lifespan would be as long as 300 years, so what was a mere 10 years worth of glory? How could they lose the big for the small? Long time no see. Ling Han raised his clasped hands at them. Everyone chatted about the recent events, and it was naturally inevitable that they would mention the domineering battle between the Rain Emperor, Yao Huiyu, and the demonic ape in the dark demon forest. None of them did not yearn for it. Person should be like Yao Huiyu. In the future, I'll become the second spear in the world, Su Wentong said with a smile. If I'm like Grandmaster Ling and become an earth-grade alchemist, wouldn't I also be able to shine brightly under the heavens? Lin Xiangqin laughed lightly, her charm overflowing. She had the same effect as Yin Hong, and they were both natural beauties. This guy and Yao Huiyu are both freaks, but one is on the path of martial arts, while the other is on the path of alchemy, Gu Fenghua said ruefully. Yet Qi Hualan said with a serious expression, Grandmaster Ling's talent in martial arts is not weak either. Everyone was startled. The main reason was that Ling Han's achievements in alchemy were too dazzling. At the age of 17, he had become an earth-grade alchemist, causing everyone to subconsciously forget about his talent in martial arts. This guy had already broken through to the spiritual ocean tier when he was in the gushing spring tier. And now that he had broken through to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, would he be able to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier? Moreover, he was currently only 18 years old. Don't worry, I will not participate in the prodigy gathering, Ling Han said with a smile. You scared this pervert to death. If you participate, you would definitely snatch away one of the spots, and perhaps I would be eliminated, Gu Fenghua said, patting his chest, looking like he had let out an exaggerated sigh of relief. Grandmaster Ling is not on the prodigy roll. Lin Xiangqin threw him another coquettish glance, tempting his heart. In truth, she was not trying to seduce Ling Han, but rather was born this way. She had thrown him a coquettish glance by accident. Haha, what high-sounding sentiments. Someone at the side was unconvinced. He crossed his arms over his chest, a disdainful expression on his face. Seeing everyone's gaze turn in his direction, he gave himself a thumbs up. Jiawenda of the Bloodflame Valley is me. If you guys are unconvinced, I will beat all of you up one by one. The Bloodflame Valley, no wonder they were so arrogant. The 4 strongest forces of the North region were 1 valley and 3 sections. The valley was the Bloodflame Valley, which had even managed to nurture a genius like Swayuda. Everyone was young and impetuous, so they were naturally unconvinced. They all glared angrily at him, but Ling Han waved them off and said, "There's no need to lower yourself to the level of these small fries." That's right. Who are we? Why should we hold a grudge against such small fries? If we really meet them, we'll just kill them with one slash. Gu Fenghua and the others nodded one after another, but this caused Diao Wenda's expression to turn livid. He had deliberately provoked them because there were a few incomparably beautiful women in this group. His goal was naturally to attract the attention of the beauties, but he had not expected that they would not take him seriously at all. Detestable guy, when you all witness my battle prowess later, I'll see how scared you all will be, Jiao Wenda thought to himself, but he managed to restrain himself. Cultivators naturally spoke with their fists. Without sufficient strength, the words that came out of their mouths would be no different from farts. It's the 7 sons of Ao family's turn. Someone exclaimed in front of them. Ao Xinglai and the others indeed walked out in a single file, and arrived in front of the testing stone monument. However, Ao Xinglai and Ao Yuanwei were both on the prodigy roll, so they had automatically obtained the right to enter the main competition. Half a year had passed, and among the 7 sons of Ao family, there were actually 3 who had stepped into the spiritual pedestal tier, and they were Ao Xinglai, Ao Yuanwei, and Ao Jiancheng. Ao Jiancheng was the 7th, and was actually able to catch up from behind, which was a little strange. The 5 sons of Ao family that did not directly enter the main competition were tested one by one, and all of them obtained battle prowess of 15 battle stars or above. It could be seen that though their cultivation levels had not increased in this half a year, their battle prowess had increased considerably. Ao Jiancheng even had battle prowess of 3 battle stars of the spiritual pedestal tier, and if placed in the prodigy roll, he would be able to rank in the top 40. Of course, this was based on last year's battle prowess, and this year's might not necessarily be the case. Yuan Wei and I also want to test our battle prowess, you don't mind, right? Ao Xinglai asked the few people in charge of recording with a smile. Of course not, please. Those few people nodded at the same time. They definitely had to give face to the heroes on the prodigy roll. Ao Xinglai nodded, and said to Ao Yuanwei, "Second, you first." Ao Yuanwei nodded expressionlessly. Ever since he had broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier, he had always been dissatisfied with the ranking of old second, and wanted to replace Ao Xinglai, but never had a good opportunity. This time he would let the other test his battle prowess. He took a long saber from the weapons rack on the side. This was made from level 5 materials, and was completely capable of withstanding the powerful power of the spiritual pedestal tier. He focused and calmed his breathing. After at least the time of 3 breaths, he suddenly slashed out with the saber. Hong! 7 flashes of saber chi swept out, yet they all struck the same spot on the stone tablet as the tip of the saber, exploding all the power of the attack in such a small area. This kind of test was not so much a test of battle prowess, but rather a test of the strongest destructive power. Under normal circumstances, there would not be a chance for you to prepare for 3 breaths time before making your move. If you did, you would have already died a few times. Wong wong wong, the characters on the 5th row lit up one after another. 1 2 3 4 5. Battle prowess of 5 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier. This was quite extraordinary. Because he had just broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier, he would naturally focus on increasing his cultivation level. Where would he find the time to temper his origin power and solidify his cultivation level? This kind of thing would naturally only be done when he reached the 9th layer. As expected of the 2nd son of the Ao family, the 78th place in the last tournament so strong. This time, he might be able to surpass the eldest son of the Ao family. The 2nd son of the Ao family can improve so much. Could it be that the eldest son of the Ao family can't? It must be Ao Xing Lai. Everyone's gazes turned to Ao Xing Lai. Chapter 328. Zhao Huan shook his head repeatedly and said, "That's a spiritual ocean tier beast. We can't possibly defeat it. My idea is that we send out a total of 5 people and attack from different directions to attract this beast, luring it away. Once that beast leaves, the rest of us will immediately dig out the yellow dragon fruit along with its roots. That beast definitely won't chase too far and will return after a while. At that time we can all escape unscathed." Not a bad idea. Ling Han didn't care much about the yellow dragon fruit, but for old friends like Qi Yongyi he was willing to lend a hand. He didn't need the yellow dragon fruit, but he could give it to Lu Yutong, Li Sichan and Qin Yi. Hun Yo also ate the root of the godly medicine, and although it was only one, the transformation was very shocking, and the yellow dragon fruit couldn't possibly have any more effect. Besides, the yellow dragon fruit could also be concocted into Restore Origin pill, which could strengthen the tier of martial artists below the spiritual ocean tier, which was very practical. Let's go check out the situation first. Ling Han didn't immediately make a decision. Yes. Everyone nodded. They set off, and on the way Ling Han said, "This yellow dragon fruit is on Yulong Mountain. Why wasn't it taken by the Winter Moon sect? That place is too remote." Everyone laughed. True, although the entire Yulong Mountain was the private property of the Winter Moon sect, this mountain was too big, and the area that the Winter Moon sect could actually control was only a small area. Deep in the mountain was still primitive, and the ones that ruled were still beasts. It was said that there were existences not weaker than the spiritual infant tier. Extremely terrifying. Thus, even the Winter Moon sect would order its disciples not to enter the depths of the Yulong Mountains without permission. However, if one wanted to make a fortune, they would have to enter the depths of the mountains. There, one could find high-level spirit medicine and even rare metals that could be used to forge god weapons. Risk always coexisted with opportunity. This obviously wasn't the depths of Yulong Mountain, but there were still places that the Winter Moon sect's disciples had overlooked. Indeed, following Qi Yongyi and the others, the path was extremely rugged and not something ordinary people could traverse. In the end, they arrived at a precipice. There they saw a strange beast lying there, snoring loudly. This wild beast was only a meter long and shaped like a dog. Its entire body was crimson, but there was a single horn on its head and a circle of eyes on its face that formed a semicircle. A quick count revealed that there were exactly 9 of them. Beside it grew a plant that was half the height of a person. It bore a string of densely packed fruits. Each fruit was not much bigger than a peanut, so the number of fruits was indeed astonishing. Ling Han's gaze swept over, and he sucked in a cold breath. This is the 9-eyed demon wolf. It was not a normal beast, but a king among the beasts. This 9-eyed beast was indeed at the Sea of Souls realm, but if it brought a king warrior with it, its battling power would not be something that a normal Sea of Souls realm warrior could compete with. Ling Han immediately knew why this 9-eyed beast didn't eat those yellow dragon fruits, because it just advanced to the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Presumably, this beast had to wait until the peak of the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier before eating the yellow dragon fruits and leaping to the spiritual pedestal tier in one go. Opportunities like this to improve one's physique were indeed better the later the tier, just like Black Tower's power boost. It was the same for beasts, absorbing the medicinal power at the moment of breakthrough, coordinating with the world-shaking changes in the body itself. That was definitely the effect of 1 + 1 being greater than 2. Beasts originally had considerable intelligence, and even had the instinct inherited from their bloodline. Thus, although they couldn't concoct pills, they surpassed humans much in using spirit medicine because they always ate them raw. "I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you guys." Ling Han shook his head, pointed at the 9-eyed demon wolf and said, "This is a 9-eyed demon wolf, at the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and a king among beasts." Once these words were spoken, everyone was dumbfounded. King, humans forming 3 flashes of chi was only minor accomplishment, 6 flashes was major accomplishment, and only those with 7 flashes and above were considered real kings. In other words, this beast was comparable to a human elite at the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier that formed at least 7 flashes of chi. How could this be played? It was impossible to lure it away, as a casual attack could kill someone from extremely far away. Fortunately, they immediately encountered another team, or else if they acted rashly, they would have been annihilated by now. Then what do we do, give up? Someone said unwillingly. That was a yellow dragon fruit, which could improve one's physique after ingesting, fundamentally changing a person. Ling Han smiled and said, there's a change of plans. Leave the task of luring the nine-eyed demon wolf to me. You guys only need to pick the herbs. His gaze burned. A beast with a king's bloodline, with such nourishing flesh and blood to replenish his chi and blood, he should be able to cultivate to perfection in the gushing spring tier and break through to the spiritual ocean tier. No. Qi Yongyi and the others immediately shook their heads, but some nodded incessantly. Since Ling Han was willing to play the hero, why not? They didn't have much of a relationship with Ling Han anyway. That's it, Ling Han said. He didn't want to play the hero, but to deal with a king like the nine-eyed demon wolf, he had to use his trump card, so he obviously had to act alone. Without waiting for everyone's agreement, Ling Han already charged out, holding a long sword in his hand and pouring origin power into it. Shua, he used the long sword as a hidden weapon, throwing it directly at the nine-eyed demon wolf. The long sword hadn't arrived when the beast wolf already stood up, and one of its eyes shot out a flash of lightning, directly shattering the long sword. It growled at Ling Han but didn't get up to chase. Obviously its intelligence wasn't low either, and it didn't fall for the trick. Ling Han smiled faintly, and another sword appeared in his hand, which he once again shot at the nine-eyed demon wolf. The Black Tower space was almost infinite anyways, and iron swords weren't worth much, so he prepared at least 1,000. The beast wolf once again shot out lightning from its eyes, shattering the flying sword. Ling Han didn't care, and continuously waved his hand. Xiao xiao xiao, flying swords danced in unison, shooting towards the beast. This king beast was finally completely enraged, pouncing towards Ling Han. Stupid dog, come and chase me. Ling Han broke into a run, using shadow wind movement technique. He was like a gust of wind blowing into the distance. Although the nine-eyed demon wolf's intelligence was quite high, it was still a beast after all, and had a violent nature. It unhesitatingly launched a chase. One man and one wolf immediately disappeared into the distance. Quickly pick the yellow dragon fruit, everyone hurriedly said. Zhao Huan looked at Ling Han's long disappeared figure, and said, don't you guys feel that this person has a familiar feeling? You think so too? Qian Wu Yong immediately said. Qi Yongyi, Bailey Tengyun, and the others all nodded. Let's not talk about this first. The yellow dragon fruit is already in our hands. Quickly retreat. They hurriedly walked back, retreating to the place where they agreed to meet up with Ling Han. No need to wait, right? Being targeted by the nine-eyed demon wolf, he's definitely dead. That's right. Quickly divide the yellow dragon fruit. Some people immediately cried out. You guys have no shame, he lured away the nine-eyed demon beast with his life, and you guys actually say that, do you still have humanity? Zhao Huan immediately rebuked. Sitting in the leader's position, he also had an additional sense of responsibility, no longer considering things from his own point of view. For a moment, everyone was a bit silent. He well said, don't you guys have no shame? A group of 7 people suddenly appeared. Chapter 329. Who are you? Zhao Huan immediately shouted. Who are we? The 7 laughed and raised their hands to show to everyone. You're blind, didn't you want to enter our sect? You don't even recognize our sect's symbol? You're the disciples of the Winter Moon sect. Everyone came to a realization. Didn't you say you could only join the exam on the 3rd day? Why did you appear now? Qian Wu Yong asked. You're quite nosy. A disciple of the Winter Moon sect said indifferently. That yellow dragon fruit belongs to our sect, we're responsible for guarding it. You immediately hand it over, and we won't argue with you. Bullshit. Bailey Tengyun was young and aggressive, immediately jumping up. That's clearly a beast guarding it, what does it have to do with you guys? I know you guys just happened to arrive, so you deliberately waited for us to get the spirit medicine before jumping out to pick the peaches. Pa, that disciple of the Winter Moon sect clapped and laughed. Aha, you're absolutely right, but so what if you guys know? I Zhanming am at the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Even if you guys work together, you're not my match. Senior brother Jean, the yellow dragon fruit is of great importance. Let's kill them all to avoid leaking the news, another disciple on the side suggested. Zhang Yuan thought about it and said, that's fine, or else we'll participate in the exam today. And it won't be good if people find out. Kill them all. Zhao Huan immediately drew her sword and said, Wu Yong Ziyan Feng Yu, you guys fight with me against that spiritual ocean tier. The others are only at the gushing spring tier, so it's not like we have no hope of winning. Okay, everyone drew their weapons. The yellow dragon fruit was too important, and none of them wanted to give it up. Zhang Yuan sneered and said, truly a bunch of trash who overestimate themselves. The battle immediately began, and blood flew again. Ling Han's figure flashed, and behind him the beast was getting closer and closer. Beasts didn't know any movement techniques, but some agility-type ones were born with astonishing speed, comparable to martial artists of the same tier using top-notch movement techniques. It was as if some kind of martial arts flowed in their blood, and they didn't need to use it at all, using it instinctively. Just like how the demonic beast was able to shoot out electricity from its eyes. If it were a martial artist, it would be considered a martial technique. However, the demonic beast was able to use it casually. Therefore, demonic beasts were never afraid of warriors of the same level. King Realm warriors were even more terrifying. Even though Ling Han was using the high-grade profound level shadow wind movement technique, the nine-eyed demon wolf still managed to catch up to him. Suddenly, an electric arc shot out from its eyes, shooting towards Ling Han. How fast is lightning? Ling Han only had time to pull back his sword to block. With a sizzling sound, he felt his right hand go numb, and the entire iron sword had already turned into a pool of molten iron. The web between his thumb and forefinger was even split open, and fresh blood gushed out. Damn! He had already cultivated the body of rock cliff. His defensive power was astonishing, yet he was injured in a single strike. It was a king-level beast, and its cultivation was way higher than his. If he wanted to kill it, it would be a bit too easy. But it was precisely because it was a king-level beast that he could use as a stepping stone to strengthen his final foundation and reach the Sea of Souls realm. No matter what, I have to try. I have the Black Tower anyways. If I can't beat it, I'll just hide. Ling Han thought roguishly, but as long as there was a sliver of chance, he definitely wouldn't give up even if he would be riddled with scars. He definitely wouldn't lose his adventurous spirit because of the Black Tower. On the contrary, it would only make him more daring. The nine-eyed demon wolf attacked with another electric arc. Ling Han didn't bother to waste his sword and directly threw out a punch. Activating the indestructible heaven scroll, a faint golden light overflowed from his hand. Hong, the electric attack arrived. Ling Han grunted as his right fist suffered another heavy injury. Damn! Although I'm at the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, I've already merged 9 spring eyes. Moreover, I've merged the 5-element origin nuclei. This kind of power can definitely compare to the 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, or even the 5th layer. However, this large dog is only at the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, so how can its attack be so fierce? If I didn't cultivate the indestructible heaven scroll, I'm afraid my entire arm would have exploded in one move. Ling Han said inwardly as he activated the indestructible heaven scroll, and his right hand quickly recovered to its original state. The indestructible heaven scroll, at least at the rock cliff tier, didn't have an obvious increase in defense. Its power lay in recovery. However, stepping into the Vajra tier was different. At that time, the physique would be indestructible, and the physical body would be practically immortal. So the nine-eyed demon wolf sent another electric arc. Are you done yet? Ling Han didn't run anymore and turned around. This place was quiet enough, and he'd changed his appearance now, so it didn't matter even if someone discovered some small secrets. The demon birth sword was unleashed, meeting the electric arc head-on. Pa! The electric arc hit, and a field of light exploded, forming a dazzling white ball, bright enough to blind people's eyes. Ling Han revealed a trace of a smile. A 10th tier spirit tool was awesome as expected. Even if it hadn't awakened, its own attribute alone was enough to scatter the electric arc. True. If even this allowed the electric arc to invade the body, then the demon birth sword would be too useless. Wang Wang on the sword's body, 2 vein-like patterns shone faintly. This spirit tool had already awakened to a certain extent. The nine-eyed demon wolf immediately revealed a vigilant expression. It was the king of beasts, and had a shocking sensitivity towards dangerous auras. However, it soon felt relieved. Although the aura emitted by the demon birth sword was dangerous, it wasn't strong, making it fearless. This beast wolf immediately pounced over and swung its right paw. Over a dozen vein-like patterns shone at the same time. Wung, 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 the will of martial art vibrated, forming a terrifying pressure. However, this was ineffective against Ling Han. A sliver of heaven-tier divine sense was enough to make him immune to most of the pressure. He raised his sword and used the four-season sword technique, meeting the beast wolf head-on. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter, the four types of concepts revolved at the same time. In an instant, there was the change of the four seasons, making people feel the passage of time and the vicissitudes of time. Pooh! The beast wolf's paw swatted down, and the sword light instantly shattered. Ling Han was directly sent flying by the paw, and the clothes on his left shoulder were torn open, leaving behind a deep wound. Blood instantly gushed out, and the beast wolf's paw was also cut open, with blood flowing everywhere. The demon birth sword was a 10th-tier spirit tool after all. Even if it hadn't awakened, its sharpness wouldn't change in the slightest. My beast wolf's blood! Ling Han yelled in distress. Every part of a royal beast's body was a treasure, especially its blood and bone marrow. Those were all extremely nutritious items, much stronger than 100-year-old ginseng. The nine-eyed demon wolf's gaze involuntarily revealed a sinister expression. As strong as it was in the spiritual ocean tier, it had long since developed intelligence, but it still maintained the bloodthirst and violence of a beast. It could understand Ling Han's words, and this made it extremely furious. It actually felt distress for it. Wasn't this already treating it as his dish? You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.